Chapter 561, Deciphering the Code. This was a very obvious problem, but normal people would easily overlook it. Why did this mysterious Gu immortal go through such great trouble, brave enormous risk, tamper with and use giant Sun Immortal Venerable's arrangement to set up their inheritance? Thinking from their perspective, if I was this Gu immortal, why would I insist on digging out 88 True Yang Building's loophole to set up my inheritance? I could set up one by myself perfectly by just spending a little effort. 88 True Yang Building is a rank 8 immortal Gu house and was personally arranged by Giant Sun Immortal Venerable. There was truly an enormous risk in using its loophole. If I wanted to wholeheartedly leave behind an inheritance, there would be absolutely no need to go so far and intentionally take risks. Unless... Fang Yuan's eyelids drooped as a cold light flashed quickly past his dark pupils. Unless, the inheritance required such an arrangement. The moment he thought of this, the fog in Fang Yuan's mind seemed to be pushed aside by two large hands. Humans always have objectives in doing things. Only an enormous objective could make a Gu immortal take such huge risks. Maybe this Gu immortal did not like Giant Sun Immortal Venerable or had hatred against him. But Giant Sun Immortal Venerable had already passed away for countless years, so this possibility was close to zero. Removing the factor of emotions, then there was only the factor of benefits. For this benefit, the mysterious Gu immortal was willing to brave the fatal danger of messing with Giant Sun Immortal Venerable's arrangement. What in the world did they intend to use 88 True Yang Building for? Fang Yuan involuntarily thought of the information Lang Yalan's spirit gave him. He had already studied this information hundreds and thousands of times. Even on the day before the large battle of the Imperial Court contest, he had been studying non-stop. Even after reading so many times, every time he read it again or recalled it, he could not help having a feeling of admiration. 88 True Yang Building was indeed of exquisite workmanship, its design was spectacular. This was a fantasy turned into reality, it was a miracle. 88 True Yang Building was essentially an immortal Gu house. Back then, Giant Sun Immortal Venerable made plans for his descendants and took the initiative to find Long-Hair Ancestor, requesting him to refine an everlasting inheritance treasure. Giant Sun Immortal Venerable's demand was too great, and as such Long-Hair Ancestor had to rack his brains and think painstakingly for 100 or so days to meet the standard. One day, he suddenly had an inspiration and took an alternate way, coming up with a unique method. The Immortal Gu house was truly overly enormous. Long-Hair Ancestor could only settle for the second best option, and divide it into countless sub-bodies which were the small towers. The quantity of these small towers reached untold numbers and attracted wild Gu worms for 10 years. As the 10-year period neared its end, they would sink one after another, sacrificing the wild Gu inside and simultaneously resonate with the blizzard outside to form a heavenly power. The heavenly power condensed bit by bit to generate a qualitative change, condensing into a floor of 88 True Yang Building. As layers and layers formed, they would finally become the complete 88 True Yang Building. From a different perspective, every time 88 True Yang Building formed, it was the process of a new refinement. Long-Hair Ancestor was indeed worthy of being known as the #1 refinement path immortal of all times. His Gu refinement attainment had already crossed the realm of mortal into a realm of divinity. It was already not easy for ordinary Gu masters to refine a Gu successfully. It was the same for Gu immortals as well when they refine immortal Gu. But Long-Hair Ancestor had already surpassed the limits of the normal Gu refinement to a level of perfection. So did 88 True Yang Building's refinement succeed? In truth, the refinement was not a complete success. If a general standard was applied, the truly complete 88 True Yang Building would be a tower that would exist for eternity in the blessed land, towering over the sacred palace. However, this standard was too difficult to fulfill. Back when Giant Sun Immortal Venerable had mentioned it, Long-Hair Ancestor's brows had furrowed deeply and had immediately said, if the refinement truly succeeds, then this immortal Gu house would be at rank 9 realm. What was the meaning of a rank 9 immortal Gu? The Gu in legends like Strength Gu, Wisdom Gu, Fate Gu, and so on were all rank 9 immortal Gu. These immortal Gu were priceless even among the priceless and had already vanished, their radiance only being revered in. Just like rank 9 Gu immortals who were given the title of Venerable, throughout the boundless history, only 10 of them appeared. There had never been a rank 9 realm immortal Gu house, but Giant Sun Immortal Venerable did not give up on his request. Long Hair Ancestor could only agree to the request, fearing the might of an immortal Venerable. Finally, he thought of a solution that was not a solution, to create a rank 9 immortal Gu house that could only exist for a short period of time, thus, 88 True Yang Building ended up being at rank 8 realm. Giant Sun Immortal Venerable had not been pleased with it, but his attitude changed after inspecting it, and was full of praise as he said, 88 True Yang Building itself holds the secret of a mortal becoming a Gu immortal. Why did he say that? The reason was that a mortal had to cross over the hurdle of the 3 elements to become a Gu immortal. Element of Heaven. Heaven above, with immeasurable might, mysterious and mighty. Element of Earth. Earth below, virtuous, stable and profound. Element of Man. Man in the center, the spirit of all beings, exerting oneself to soar above. Mortal were like tiny insects, and only by connecting with heaven and earth, could they be free of their mortal state and make themselves go through a fundamental evolution. And 88 True Yang Buildings formation made use of these 3 elements. The Imperial Court contest was to spread the element of man. The 10-year blizzard was a cruel and vicious element of heaven. The small towers sinking into the ground were borrowing the blessed land's element of earth. The 3 elements combine into one, and a mortal becomes an immortal. The 3 elements combined to form 88 True Yang Building that plundered Northern Plains resources to give rise to Huang Jin family's super tribes, and allowed Giant Sun Immortal Venerable's influence to be inextinguishable for countless years. Wait a moment, don't tell me. Fang Yuan's body shook slightly as a bright light blossomed in his eyes. The small towers are a part of 88 True Yang Building. The mysterious Gu immortal who set up Di Chio inheritance broke this small tower and created a hole. When the hole formed, according to the principle of the refinement of 88 True Yang Building, there should be a backflow of heavenly power to condense into a new small tower. 88 True Yang Building was a rank 8 immortal Gu house and was very difficult to destroy. But the small towers could be easily destroyed. This was like the difference between a Gu immortal and mortals. Thus, when Giant Sun Immortal Venerable arranged these small towers in the Blessed Land, he used the strength of Imperial Court Blessed Land to protect them tightly and isolate them from most sources of damage. Long Hair Ancestor was the #1 immortal in refinement path, so he naturally had considered the situation of the small towers being destroyed. Thus, every 10 years, during the time of the formation of 88 True Yang Building's main body, the condensed heavenly power would first flow back to repair the gaps in the small towers before condensing into the main body. However, Di Chio inheritance had already been set up for many years, but the small tower over it has still not been repaired. Moreover, this mysterious Gu immortal used some method to seal up this gap and deceive 88 True Yang Building. I understand now, the reason they did this should be none other than to make use of the heavenly power that condenses into 88 True Yang Building. Light in the soil, shine up to 100,000 feet high, swimming in the sky for 100 li, praising plum fragrant snow. It seems this secret phrase is the method of Gu refinement. In fact, Fang Yuan had guessed this before. However, he did not have conclusive evidence back then. Now, although it was still a guess, but after testing and probing it, Fang Yuan was much more confident. Time always seemed to move faster when one was pondering deeply. He Lu Lan and his group were defeated by the Golden White Tiger Phantom, and were sent out of the tower. To not attract any suspicion, Fang Yuan could only use the Glass Owner token to get out of the tower. A group of people suddenly appeared at the entrance of the first floor of the tower. They have appeared, the lords have returned. Subordinate greets Lord Tribe Leader and all the lords. The guards sitting there, who were of He tribe's direct line of descent, immediately came forward to greet. He Lu Lan and the group all looked battered and exhausted or were covered in blood. Although they had failed, they had made much progress and gains as they were even able to push forward for over 10 rounds. However, the situation this time was special. He Lu Lan and others' gazes landed on Fang Yuan, revealing the intent of probing, curiosity, doubts and investigating. Ha ha ha, everyone worked hard and contributed highly for this expedition, especially Wolf King who can be said to be the #1 in contribution this time. After returning, organize a banquet immediately, we will celebrate for 3 days. He Lu Lan laughed loudly and lightly patted Fang Yuan's shoulder, showing off their close relationship. High-grade evaluation made Fang Yuan's worth rise by another level in his heart. I gained some insight from this trip, I need to undergo closed cultivation to consolidate them. I hope Lord He Lu Lan would not blame me. Fang Yuan lightly smiled and directly turned down He Lu Lan. He Lu Lan's smile froze before immediately recovering the next moment and said it was not a problem, showing the disposition of a magnanimous leader. As for how furious he was inwardly, or how much the others were envious, Fang Yuan did not care. He wanted to return now to study the secrets of Di Qiu inheritance meticulously. 6 days later. Fang Yuan pushed open the window and looked down at the sacred palace, his eyes flashing with a light of joy. He had fully solved the secret of Di Qiu inheritance. One only required a correct direction for such riddles and it would only be a matter of time. Just as Fang Yuan guessed before, the cipher was a recipe for refining immortal Gu. The mysterious Gu immortal who arranged the inheritance used the loophole of the 88 True Yang building, borrowing the power which would condense into 88 True Yang building to refine an immortal Gu. As long as one followed the words of the secret phrase and refined the Gu step by step, even a mortal Gu master could refine it successfully. The origin of this chapter's debut can be traced to /n/o/vel/b/in. It was because the immortal Gu refinement was not relying on the mortal Gu master's power, but was borrowing from the strength of 88 True Yang building. But as for what this immortal Gu was, Fang Yuan did not know and could only make conjectures from the secret phrase. This Gu immortal should very likely be from Central Continent. The Gu refinement method is filled with Central Continent style. And adding on my previous life's video, this inheritance should be in the form of a chain and what I obtained was likely only a part of it. Fang Yuan estimated in his heart. In Fang Yuan's past life, Central Continent Gu immortals planned to use this loophole to breach 88 True Yang building. They should have discovered some preceding clue to this inheritance. This was not strange. Many Gu masters, when setting inheritances, would arrange them step by step, and leave behind clues after clues. If the fated ones had enough ability, they could inherit the whole inheritance. If their ability was not up to par, they could only receive a part of the benefits. Central Continent Gu immortals should have obtained the preceding clues to this inheritance and should not have known the latter part of the secret phrase. Otherwise, they definitely would not waste the chance of obtaining an immortal Gu. And what Fang Yuan accidentally obtained was only the latter part. Without the preceding clues, it became extremely incomprehensible. If not for Fang Yuan having the intel of 88 True Yang building in his previous life's memories, he would not have been able to comprehend it even if he was given ample time. Chapter 562, Reason for Being Cowardly and Afraid of Death. Speaking of it, this Central Continent Gu immortal is truly amazing, seeing through 88 True Yang buildings whole and also using such an idea. Clearly, they were also a refinement path master. No, to reach this step, they have to be at least a grandmaster in refinement path. They actually left behind an immortal Gu as an inheritance. This is truly an immortal treasure. They put the clue in fake gray-white stone slabs. Such creativity and innovation was really amazing. I wonder what kind of successor they want to choose. The most crucial problem of the secret phrase was resolved, but even more questions popped out. Fang Yuan shook his head and cleared up his disorganized thoughts. No matter what, this inheritance is related to an immortal Gu. I need to give it a try with all my effort. Now, it should take over half a month at least to prepare the relevant Gu worms. Light in the soil, shine up to 100,000 feet high, swimming in the sky for 100 li, praising plum fragrant snow. These four phrases might be simple, but Fang Yuan would not have been able to decipher them without his refinement path master attainment. Based on Fang Yuan's current comprehension, he needed over 200 Gu worms to borrow the force of 88 true Yang building and refine the mysterious immortal Gu. Among them were 28 rank 4 and rank 5 Gu worms. And this number was only enough for one use. Fang Yuan, in preparing the Gu refinement, would have to make at least 3 times the preparatory materials to prevent any errors during the Gu refinement process which could lead to failure. And in case he failed, he would require spare Gu worms. 16 days later. In the hall, He Lu Lan showed the demeanor of the black tyrant to the fullest, shouting fiercely and wantonly venting out the anger in his heart. The elders who were scolded and even beaten by He Lu Lan could not raise their heads and were quiet out of fear. Ever since He Lu Lan entered Imperial Court Blessed Land, his temper had been getting increasingly violent. After 88 True Yang building opened, this change intensified and his temper became like a barrel of gunpowder, berating and beating his subordinates at the slightest pretext. As of today, there were already 3 He tribe elders who were heavily beaten by him and were still bedridden. Lord Tribe Leader, it is not us slacking in our duty, but this 78th round is truly too difficult. The Golden White Tiger Phantom Guardian is too strong and has 30% of the Desolate Beast's powers. With our mortal bodies, no matter how much we try, we can only harass it and have no way to harm it heavily. Moreover, if the Golden White Tiger goes on the offense, our Gu masters would not be able to resist it. He Pei, the head of the elders, waited for He Lu Lan to finish venting his anger, before cautiously speaking. He Lu Lan glanced at him and cursed, "Your words are bullshit. Golden White Tiger Phantom might have strong attacking prowess, but as long as we all unite and disregard the sacrifices, we can definitely defeat it before the time limit. You guys are all afraid of difficulties, tarnishing my He tribe's reputation of bravery." The elders shrunk their heads after being scolded, not daring to say anything. He Lu Lan's words were actually not without reason. It was already not the first time in dealing with the Golden White Tiger Phantom. If they truly disregarded sacrifices, and people were willing to be cannon fodder and fought to give others an opportunity, even at the cost of their own lives under the claws of the Golden White Tiger Phantom, then He tribe's offense, although powerless, would accumulate with time, and could be like groups of ants biting an elephant, eventually defeating the Golden White Tiger Phantom. But the truth of the matter was when the Golden White Tiger Phantom attacked, everyone feared for their life and was afraid of going forward, causing He Lu Lan's advancement in 88 True Yang building to stop at this round, unable to progress any further. He Lu Lan's shouts kept on resounding in the hall. Right now, no one dared to antagonize this furious black tyrant who did not spare even his tribesmen. After He Lu Lan vented his anger once more, he sat down on the main seat with a gloomy expression. His heart was filled with pent-up fury, especially when he looked at these silent elders. He felt sick to his stomach. Besides anger, he felt helplessness. During the Imperial Court contest, these He tribe elders had fought bravely and had no fear. But in this place, they were worried for their safety. Where did their courage go? Actually, He Lu Lan understood. During the Imperial Court contest, rewards and punishments were openly issued. People fought to be the first, competing for fame and fortune, to be stronger and to survive. However, in 88 True Yang building, the rewards for passing the stages would go to the tribe leader, which caused everyone to have very little incentive to charge through the rounds. The most important reason was that they had already won the imperial court contest and there were no more threats to their survival, and there were also many inheritances outside the sacred palace. As long as they survived this period of time, they were bound to have an even more radiant future when they exited imperial court blessed land. Only fools would do things like abandoning their lives and acting as cannon fodder to help someone else. He tribe's elders were all extremely crafty. Preserving their lives was most important, and besides that, so what if they were scolded and beaten by He Lulan? Even if He Lulan heavily injured them and they had to lie on the bed, it was nothing compared to dying. He Lulan was aware of the elders' thoughts. Even if I am a rank 5 expert, I cannot control their will. Once there is no unity, it will not be easy to lead even if the tribe is stronger. Never mind. He Lulan sighed inwardly and spoke, since it is so, then I can only open up 88 True Yang building and gather everyone's strength to charge through the rounds. Requesting outside help required guest tokens. But right now, besides He tribe, there were also other Huangjin tribes like Yi Lui tribe, Ma tribe and so on in imperial court blessed land. One could imagine that once He Lulan opens up 88 True Yang building to them, these people would definitely charge forward madly. With this, they could be the cannon fodder. After hearing He Lulan's words, the elders exchanged veiled communication with each other through their gazes. This method allowed them to stay away from the vanguard position, but they were somewhat unwilling. The first elder He Pei stepped forward, Lord Tribe Leader, this is a clever method but we need to keep up our guard. These people might have the old ancestors' bloodline running through them, but they are not of our He tribe. When they pass the rounds and get the benefits, I am afraid they won't hand over anything. That's right, Lord. Elder He Qisheng also added, our He tribe racked our brains and suffered great difficulties before we were able to emerge as the winner in this time's imperial court contest. This 88 True Yang building is ours, why should we share it with outsiders? There are precedents of such actions, but when looking at history, those were all weak tribes who won by fluke and did not have the ability to get through the stages, so they had no choice but to mobilize other Huangjin tribes. Our He tribe is strong and has many competent experts, how can we seek others' help? Humph. He Lulan raised his brows, since our troops are strong, why are we not able to challenge even one golden white tiger phantom? You group of dogs hit trash, only cherishing your lives dearly, but when I want to bring in outsiders to stake their lives for us, you are afraid of them taking the benefits? Do you think there is such a good thing in this world? Different from these elders, He Lulan was already feeling very anxious. He was the possessor of great strength true martial physique and must obtain a strength path immortal Gu to advance to Gu immortal. Only by becoming an immortal, could he alleviate this threat to his life. However, whether 88 True Yang building had any strength path immortal Gu or which floor the strength path immortal Gu was on, both were unknown. As such, he wholeheartedly wanted to break the conventions and bring in the situation where the Huangjin tribes cooperate to get through the rounds. Each round he passed would allow the owner token with him to advance and make it more convenient to proceed onwards. Although they were defeated repeatedly at this round, He Lulan thought of it as a good opportunity. He took the chance to create difficulty and shouted once again. His furious shouts resounded in the hall, causing everyone's ears to hear buzzing. Due to He Lulan's might and terrifying reputation, the elders could only choose to compromise. The first elder He Pei said with worry, opening 88 True Yang building to others is like letting in a torrent, once its momentum increases, it will definitely cause disastrous losses. I suggest we place some limits. Wolf King Chang Shan Yin was a lesson that is right before us. These words immediately caused an intense commotion among the elders. Someone said with a bitter tone, right, Wolf King is really a hoodlum, he is hogging the benefits all to himself. Right now, he is in closed-door cultivation, maybe inwardly laughing to himself. Someone scoffed with disdain, 88 True Yang building belongs to He tribe, we let him participate to tackle the round because we thought highly of him. But he repays us like this, humph, what dogs hit Northern Plains hero, he is just an ungrateful thief. Someone said with a cold and gloomy gaze, in my opinion, when we open up 88 True Yang building this time, we should not bring Xianxia in. This will teach him a lesson. He Lulon coldly snorted, he was naturally greatly dissatisfied with Fang Yuan's behavior. If it was someone else, he would have already taken action. But Xianxia was not a measly character, his bearing in the decisive battle of the imperial court contest was still deeply engraved in He Lulan's mind. If he said he was not afraid, he would be lying. However, openly excluding Xianxia was not appropriate as well. Not only would that be a display of narrow-mindedness, in case Wolf King was offended, even if Xianxia did not make a move, he still had the Azure Wolf group. First Elder He Pei, since you mentioned this, then let's hear it. He Lulan spoke. He Pei slightly smiled and said with confidence, there is no problem in opening 88 True Yang building to the outside from tomorrow. But before entering the building, no matter who it is, they would need to pay a fee. There will only be a quota of 800 entrants every day and the fee for entrance will increase according to the order of the entrance. At the same time, they must use poison vow Gu and agree to give 50% of all their gains to He tribe. He paused before continuing, as for outsiders that want to enter the tower, they need to pay a high price to purchase our guest tokens. Every elder present at the scene immediately had bright gazes as they praised this suggestion. He Lulan swept over the scene once before leaning back on his chair, slowly closing his eyes, all right, this matter shall be done as He Pei says. He Pei was exulted, Lord Tribe Leader is wise and powerful, thank you Lord Tribe Leader for your appreciation. The news of 88 True Yang building opening to the outside spread and immediately caused a huge sensation in the sacred palace. Countless people rushed to the place of registration, one side cursed He tribesmen for their ruthlessness in asking such a greatly high fee, while another side paid generously and even fought others for a quota to enter. Fang Yuan observed indifferently, but he was inwardly happy. Right now, inheriting Di Qiu inheritance was of the utmost priority to him. Even if He Lulan took the initiative to invite him, he would not have been very willing. While the others had their attentions on 88 True Yang building now, it was the perfect time for him to make his move on the inheritance. Chapter 563, Nature of the Three Inheritances. The night sky of Imperial Court blessed land was covered in silvery light, like silk or fog, it shone down on the land like a vast veil. A group of azure wolves were running freely in the sky, chasing birds in the air or hunting animals on the ground. They were not hunting for food, it was merely leisure. Fang Yuan stood above Di Qiu, slowly opening his eyes. These days, not only did he prepare for the Gu refinement, he even expanded his wolf groups. Not just the Azure Wolf group, the land-based ordinary wolves, including Turtleback Wolf, Water Wolf, Night Wolf etc., had reached 200,000 in numbers. The wolf group has previously been spread around a radius of 100 li, it can be a good method of deterrence. Moreover, the Azure Wolf group in the sky has already become the symbol of Wolf King. Most Gu masters would understand that Xianxia is hunting here when they see the wolves, thus they will choose to take a detour. If they did not detour, it meant that they had ill intentions. Once these Gu masters were discovered by the wolves, they would be attacked by them. Of course, there were innocent people who entered by accident, but Fang Yuan could not care less about them, it is their bad luck if they get killed by wolves. Fang Yuan turned his gaze towards the sacred palace, although he was far away, he could see the dazzling aurora in the sky. The sacred palace was shining in bright light once again, it was a beautiful sight, and also the sign that 88 True Yang building was going to materialize the second floor. This had another meaning in Fang Yuan's case. The towers sink and countless wild Gu are sacrificed in order to become the mystical power that forms the immortal Gu house. This aurora was the accumulation of such power, and it had already reached the point of reaching a qualitative change. In order to open Di Qiu inheritance, Fang Yuan needed to borrow the strength of this mystical power, and cause it to flow backwards. In order to get through the stages, He Lulan intentionally opened the 88 True Yang building to the public, causing everyone to get excited and all Gu masters to feel moved. Once the news spread, all the Gu masters outside the sacred palace came and gathered here. Everyone's attention is on the 88 True Yang building now. This is the perfect time for me to open the inheritance. Fang Yuan's gaze shone as he smiled. Without hesitation, he struck. Go. He patted his belly, and 36 Gu worms flew out of his aperture. These Gu were of peculiar shapes. Their bodies were tiny and were half the size of a fingernail. They were like 5-pointed stars, giving off a milky white light. These were rank 1 Little Light Gu, a very famous light path assistance type Gu. As Fang Yuan willed, these little light Gu flew into Di Qiu's cave. At once, the darkness in the cave was lifted. Fang Yuan summoned another 13 light fences Gu. This Gu was rank 3, also from the light path. Once activated, they can turn into fences and restrain the target. The light fences Gu flew into the cave and mixed with the little light Gu, but there were no changes. Fang Yuan smiled lightly. He waved his hand and 3 rank 5 light path Gu came out. These 3 Gu were lightning flash Gu that increased speed, unlimited spring light Gu that healed, as well as the attack type heaven blazing spark Gu. Lightning flash Gu gave off a blue light. It shone like lightning as it flew into the cave. The motionless Di Qiu finally had some changes. As if a mechanism was unlocked, the ground and soil around Di Qiu started to expand and connect. The blue lightning destroyed the little light Gu from before, and became a light blue glow, having an extremely powerful aura. But at the same time, the light fences Gu connected with each other and formed light fences that kept the blue lightning in. The blue light was about to break out, but at this time unlimited spring light flew in and gave off an unlimited jade green aurora. It was gentle as water, suppressing the blue light and forming a stalemate. Eventually, the blazing heaven spark Gu flew in and turned into a bright red light. It pierced the green aura and the blue light, going deeper into the cave. With some loud sounds, the cave entrance slowly closed. In the deep parts of the land, 3 lights were mixing together, engaging in a mysterious transformation that Fang Yuan could not describe. Fang Yuan saw this and his heart settled. He knew that he was right. This was the light in the soil part of the quote. Although he was 80% sure, he was worried about mistakes. After all, he only had the latter half of the inheritance's clue. The first half was held in the hands of Central Continent Gu Immortal's hands. But this latter half described the method to open this inheritance. Fang Yuan used his foundation as a refinement master, and together with 88 True Yang buildings information, he forcefully interpreted this code and gained the chance to snatch the inheritance midway. About an hour later, the sounds from under the ground became softer. But the ground became hotter. Even though Fang Yuan was wearing Northern Plains deer leather shoes, it could not isolate this heat. The hole in the ground slowly opened, as the light was gone, leaving pure darkness inside. Fang Yuan saw this and he became elated. After light in the soil, it was shine up to 100,000 feet high. If interpreted literally, it would be a huge mistake. This quote was a test, to test the refinement ability of the Gu master. The quote was regarding refinement path. Shine up to 100,000 feet high was not just a description of the scenery, it also described the steps for the refinement process. Fang Yuan was not flustered or worried. He threw 2 defensive rank 5 shine back spike Gu, 3 investigative type high observation Gu, 1 attack type 10,000 heart piercing arrow Gu, and 9 assistance type 9 feet flame Gu. Only to see that inside the cave, gray-yellow smoke was rumbling but did not ooze out. The sounds of chirping birds or flying arrows, shrieking sounds that pierced the air came from within the smoke. This scene lasted for 7 minutes, until darkness returned again. The ground closed again, as the cave vanished. This time, Di Qiu no longer gave off heat, but instead cold air was seeping, causing Fang Yuan's legs to turn stiff from the cold. Fang Yuan breathed out a sigh, turning his gaze towards the sacred palace. If my guess is correct, the sacred palace is going to become chaotic now. At this moment, in the sacred palace. At a side hall, the secret door concealed by trees opened. An elderly man with snow-white hair walked out with a middle-aged Gu master. "Old sir, please take care." First Elder He Pei brought Tai Bai Yunxing out from the secret door and patted his chest. "Don't worry, with me here, you are sure to have a guest token." Tai Bai Yunxing laughed, "Since Elder He Pei is making a promise, I am sure it will succeed." "Of course I am assured, you do not have to send me off, goodbye." "Goodbye." First Elder He Pei placed his fist by his chest as he bowed, seeing Tai Bai Yunxing turn around the corner and vanishing from his vision under the concealment of the trees. The allure of an immortal venerable inheritance is really huge, to think that even Tai Bai Yunxing came to bribe me. He Pei sighed. Ever since He Lu Lan opened up the 88 True Yang building, Elder He Pei who was in charge of this matter became extremely popular. Every day, all sorts of people came to visit him in secret. Some used their relationships while others talked about and tried to obtain friendship. There were people who bribed him and people who tried to attract him sexually. But Tai Bai Yunxing's visit was a shock to He Pei. Tai Bai Yunxing had a huge reputation. He was the #1 healer in Northern Plains. He saved countless people and was an extremely righteous man with great character. His influence was great. He Pei had not expected Tai Bai Yunxing to bribe him of all people. In the end, old Sir Tai Bai is still immortal. There are only so many guest tokens. If it was me, I would not be able to resist it either. He Pei laughed, raising his head subconsciously towards the top of the sacred palace. There, an aurora of dazzling lights had condensed into a thick fog. Within the thick fog, the second layer of the 88 True Yang building was already visible. In no time, the second layer will materialize. Not far away, Tai Bai Yunxing raised his head and looked. The colorful aurora shone on his white hair and his wrinkled face. Tai Bai Yunxing was in a daze, an event deep within his memories resurfaced. That day, the sunset was bright like a fire, burning in the sky. This was the 14-year-old Tai Bai Yunxing, who had just met the old beggar who changed his life forever. "Young lad, you gave me a bowl of water, you saved this old beggar's life. What do you want? Say it, I will try my best to fulfill your wishes." The old beggar had messy purple-red hair. He was slightly insane at times, while unconscious sometimes. But when he was awake, his gaze was deep as the ocean. He gave off a disposition that could be etched into a person's memories. "I want to be a Gu master," the young Tai Bai Yunxing said. "What kind of Gu master do you want to be?" He, I have 3 complete inheritances. The first can allow you to bathe in flames and step on fire, surpassing mortals. The second can allow you to control wind and the air, roaming the world freely. The third can surpass life and death, allowing you to help the people in the world. The old beggar laughed and his rotten yellow teeth were exposed. The young Tai Bai Yunxing frowned and thought about it, before choosing the third inheritance. As he snapped out of his daze, returning from the trip to his memory lane, Tai Bai Yunxing laughed bitterly, muttering, "In the end, I am a person that is afraid of dying." This chapter was originally shared via N0V3L_ by J.N. When he was young, he did not have such feelings. In fact, he became indifferent after witnessing many situations of death. When Tai Bai Yunxing got old, his healthy body slowly became weak and feeble. He started reminiscing about the times in his youth. Often, people's thoughts changed with their circumstances. On earth, one could not surpass the limits of life and death, they had no choice but to accept it. But here, as long as there was a trace of hope, they would struggle and fight. Only when he was faced with such a situation, when Tai Bai Yun Sheng became closer and closer to death, did he become aware of this great terror. Because of this, he secretly observed and waited for several rounds, before clearly understanding the situation, deciding to participate in this imperial court contest and enter imperial court blessed land. If I can obtain lifespan Gu from 88 True Yang building, I would be able to increase my lifespan. Although lifespan Gu is hard to find, and even harder to buy or sell, I'm sure there are some inside 88 True Yang building. If in the end, I cannot obtain a lifespan Gu, I can only attempt to ascend to Gu immortal realm. Tai Bai Yun Sheng evaluated in his heart. The inheritance the old beggar gave him was outstanding. It was an entire inheritance that allowed one to cultivate all the way to rank 6 Gu immortal realm. The inheritance stated very clearly the method for a mortal to ascend to Gu immortal realm. Thus, Tai Bai Yun Sheng was very clear of the risks he had to take to reach Gu immortal realm. To advance to Gu immortal realm, one needed to gather and fuse the elements of heaven, earth, and man. If either of the three aspects were insufficient, they would die and their soul would dissipate. If he was not desperate, Tai Bai Yun Sheng did not want to ascend to Gu immortal realm. That was because even if he ascended to Gu immortal realm, it could not raise his lifespan. But in Tai Bai Yun Sheng's inheritance, there was hope left for him. But this hope was very difficult to obtain. He needed to succeed in advancing to Gu immortal realm for there to be a possibility. These years, Tai Bai Yun Sheng had been searching for lifespan Gu, but lifespan Gu were created from heaven and earth, they could not be located easily and were hard to catch. Tai Bai Yun Sheng made no progress. There should be lifespan Gu inside 88 True Yang building, I can definitely find lifespan Gu there. Tai Bai Yun Sheng looked at 88 True Yang building's figure as he cheered for himself secretly. But the next moment, his pupils expanded as he saw an unbelievable scene. Chapter 564, Heavenly Power Backflow Shocks the Sacred Palace. The whole sacred palace fell into shock and fear. After a while, a large commotion suddenly rose up. What the hell is going on? What happened? Why is the aurora shrinking? A scene that had never occurred before was happening in everyone's sights. The second floor that had been gradually condensing into form was slowly becoming fainter. Great amounts of the thick aurora were reducing and becoming lighter at a visible speed. What happened? He Lu Lan's brows furrowed into a knot as he grabbed Elder He Pei's collar with his thick arm and pulled towards him. His expression was twisted and his eyes opened with fury as he shouted, "Investigate it. I must know what the hell happened." He Lu Lan possessed one of the 10 extreme physiques, great strength true martial physique. Only by becoming an immortal, could he avoid the pressure of death. However, for 10 extreme physiques to become immortal, they required the help of relevant immortal Gu. He Lu Lan placed his hopes on 88 True Yang building to find the key to become immortal, a strength path immortal Gu, so how could he let an accident happen to 88 True Yang building? Elder He Pei's body shivered in fright. He Lu Lan asked him to investigate the details, but he was only a mortal, how could he investigate it? What could he investigate? In a sobbing tone, he answered, This subordinate does not know, there were no instances of this happening in historical records. It is getting lighter, it is becoming even more light. Someone shouted while pointing at 88 True Yang building. The aurora became smaller, and the thick light, dimmer. Many Gu masters looked up in a daze, panic quickly spreading everywhere. Is 88 True Yang building damaged? This is something our immortal venerable old ancestor personally arranged. Could it be that 88 True Yang building also cannot compete against the flow of the river of time? Some had pale expressions while even more covered their heads, their gaze filled with fear. They are in chaos. From far away, Fang Yuan looked with an eerie gaze and a cold smile on his face. Even if he was far away, the panicked shouts in the sacred palace still reached his ears. The culprit behind this terror glanced at the sacred palace before looking down at Di Chio cave below. His gaze shone with a strange light as he praised, "Amazing, truly amazing." Fang Yuan had originally estimated that only 10% at most would be absorbed, but he had never thought when he activated the mechanism, the backflow of the heavenly power would surpass his estimation. Based on just this, Fang Yuan could tell this Gu immortal's understanding of 88 True Yang building was absolutely not beneath his. Who is this mysterious Gu immortal? What identity do they have? I had a fortuitous encounter, the advantage of rebirth and also the first-hand information from Langya Land Spirit. But how was he or she able to have such a deep understanding of 88 True Yang building? Right now, the cave was filled to the brim with light, almost to the point of overflowing, but it was firmly restrained by the layer of black light at the entrance. The aurora surged freely, the intense light that was brewing inside was becoming more and more vigorous. Crack. Cracks started appearing on the first floor of 88 True Yang building. Hei Pei and the other elders went pale as they looked at this scene in a daze. As for the other Gu masters at the lower floors of the sacred palace, many were already kneeling on the ground, kowtowing non-stop. Some shouted, some wept and some begged. "Don't collapse, don't collapse. Old ancestor, what mistake did we commit? Why are you punishing us like this? We beg old ancestor to show mercy, please give another chance to us unfilial descendants." All these voices entered He Lu Lan's ears as he stared at the first floor of 88 True Yang building rigidly. The cracks were continuously spreading on the first floor. Even if He Lu Lan was a rank 5 Gu master with an extreme physique, an existence at the peak of mortals, right now he was feeling bewilderment, helplessness, hesitation and weakness. No, this can't go on. I cannot allow this to happen. He Lu Lan shouted in fury, his expression malevolent and his gaze filled with hot fury. I have yet to avenge Mother. My vengeance. My strength path immortal Gu. He screamed in his heart. Rumble. A soft sound was heard, but the earth shook. 88 True Yang building's first floor, which was completely condensed, collapsed completely and turned back into the free aurora light. The light was like a flood that had broken the dam as it gushed out and spread rapidly. In just a few breaths of time, it enshrouded the whole sacred palace and dyed the horizons. Puff! He Lu Lan's gaze lost its focus as suffocation filled his stomach. He involuntarily spurted out stagnated blood that had flowed in reverse towards his throat. No! I won't allow this. Form back right now. Come back. He opened up his palms and tried to grab the aurora. And as if it was responding to his effort, the aurora that were gushing out gradually reduced and the surrounding lights also started falling back. He Lu Lan's gaze flashed, a spark of hope had just ignited in him, but was completely gone the next moment. The aurora light might have gathered back together, but it did not condense back to the image of the first floor. The light continued to reduce as if a giant incorporeal beast was swallowing it. No, don't. Far away, Tai Bai Yunxing mumbled, his expression becoming spiritless. Do the heavens want my He tribe dead? First Elder He Pei clutched his hair. A problem occurred in 88 True Yang building in He tribe's hands. This meant He tribe was completely finished. Other super forces and Huang Jin tribes would not let them go. Heavens, what happened? 88 True Yang building is actually. Yi Lui Sang grabbed his chest in fear. Near his heart resided the fire path immortal Gu, which was lent by Yi Lui tribe's supreme elder Yi Lui Lai before the imperial court contest. Right now, this fire path immortal Gu was trembling non-stop. Almost at the same time, Fang Yuan's expression also had a slight change. In his aperture, spring-autumn cicada revealed its true body, trembling continuously and was emitting its immortal Gu aura, causing his rank 5 aperture to creak from the pressure. This is the resonance of the great Tao in heaven and earth. Feng Yuan was well aware of this. Man was the spirit of all living beings, Gu was the essence of heaven and earth, a vessel of the great Tao. If a mortal Gu was said to hold only a tiny fragment of the law of heaven and earth, then an immortal Gu would hold a corner of the great Tao, an intact piece of the rules of heaven and earth. Because of this, there could only be one immortal Gu of its kind. Every time an immortal Gu was born, other immortal Gu in the surroundings would tremble and respond. The more closely related or conflicting the law inside Gu worms' bodies are, the stronger the resonance between them, and the greater the extent they would tremble. From the extent of spring-autumn cicadas trembling, this immortal Gu that is about to be born is not of the time path. Feng Yuan estimated, but his gaze was tightly looking at the cave without the least bit of negligence. Inside the cave, the aurora from 88 True Yang building was continuously being absorbed before fading away as it nurtured the intense light within. This intense light was becoming more and more flourishing, the black membrane at the entrance was starting to show signs of not being able to restrain it. That'll do. If I don't make a move now, the black membrane will burst and the aurora will shoot to the sky and expose me. It is still a small matter if He Lulan and the rest are the ones that discover me, but in case it awakens 88 True Yang building's hibernating will, then it will just take one thought from the immortal venerables will to turn me into ashes. Feng Yuan had endured the impulse to make a move several times before, and now the timing was fully ripe, he made his move, throwing in large numbers of Gu worms. Gu worms from rank 1 to rank 5 from all paths sprinkled down like rain. This situation looked disorderly and complex, but it actually had a special profoundness to it. The Gu worms were not only divided into separate groups, they even had particularly specific distances from each other, to the extent that some Gu worms fell slightly slower while some fell faster. This was a high-grade technique of Gu refinement called the sprinkler. Gu masters with natural talent and aptitude could master enslavement path and flying skills. But even the Gu masters with higher natural talent required thousands of tries before they could display a decent use of the sprinkler technique. Feng Yuan's attainment in this technique was beyond the level of just a decent performance, and was enough to make other refinement path masters exclaim in surprise. After the Gu worms sprinkled down, the aurora slowly changed color into that of blue water or the sky, before becoming still. In the blue light, countless white lights flew like birds and swam like fish. Specks of white light would occasionally gather into a heap and from time to time scatter like stars. Just glancing at this for a moment caused Feng Yuan to feel dizzy. He quickly moved his gaze towards the sacred palace. The clamors in the sacred palace had already decreased. After the aurora light enshrouding the sacred palace decreased by around half, the speed of its reduction slowed. Seeing that no one was paying attention here and the scattered wolf groups were also not sending any battle signals, Feng Yuan inwardly breathed a sigh of relief. Everything is going smoothly, it should be the final step now. He was extremely cautious and did not even have the slightest intent of being conceited, instead he was even more vigilant. Whether it was the history of this world or on Earth, how many cases were there of people failing at the last hurdle? Moreover, this final step would create a huge commotion and was the step where a problem was most likely to appear. Feng Yuan slightly flicked his wrist and a smelly fart goo that he had been holding lightly flew into the cave. Immediately a peculiar fragrance spread out of the cave. The peculiar fragrance flew even without wind, soon spreading out. Stopped, it has stopped. After a while of shock and fear, the Gu masters in the sacred palace became wild with joy. Lord, the aurora has stopped reducing and has begun to slowly increase again. A He tribe elder shouted excitedly, and was kicked by He Lulan. I can see that. He Lulan kicked the elder to the ground, his gaze was ruthless but the deep voice could not conceal his joy. However, his heart was extremely nervous. The reduction of 88 Truyang Building's aurora and even the collapse of the floor had never happened before. What had happened? He Lulan's mind was filled with doubts. He did not know why there was a problem, it caused him to worry greatly. What made He Lulan even more helpless and indignant was that 88 Truyang Building was the work of an immortal venerable. Even if I knew where the problem was, I probably would not be able to solve it with just my ability. If he was to know that it was all caused by Feng Yuan single-handedly, then he would probably risk his life and tear off the seal placed on him by Immortal Gu Dark Limit, to pit his life against Feng Yuan. Chapter 565, Everyone with Their Own Intentions. 88 Truyang Building's shocking change was a traumatic experience for everyone in the sacred palace. Countless people were worried, scared and helpless. Fortunately, the situation stabilized not long after 88 Truyang Building's first floor collapsed. The aurora no longer reduced and was instead beginning to increase again. Maybe because it was provoked, the speed of this aurora's increase was somewhat faster than before. Several days later, the thick-as-water aurora condensed back to the first floor of 88 Truyang Building. After it had completely formed, He Lulan and the others immediately entered it anxiously. Their entry to 88 Truyang Building proceeded smoothly. This made He Lulan greatly relieved and he gradually calmed down. 88 Truyang Building was extremely significant to him. He needed to become a Gu immortal to avenge his mother. As the possessor of one of the 10 extreme physiques, great strength true martial physique, his only hope of becoming an immortal was to obtain a strength path immortal Gu from 88 Truyang Building. This was depicted in For humans to live, it was okay if they did not have strength or even wisdom, but they could not lose hope. He Lulan regained the hope of saving his life. His mood gradually turned better as he started to plan his next breakthrough of the 100 rounds. The first floor of 88 Truyang Building had formed anew, so the checkpoints had reset, making He Lulan's previous efforts turn into smoke. He needed to overcome everything again. The primary upload of this chapter happened on N0V3L equals B, J, N. To He Pei and the other elders, this was a very good thing. This is joy after extreme sorrow. Going through the rounds again will allow us to get even more rewards. Maybe that was a small joke by old ancestor Immortal Venerable. Every floor in 88 Truyang Building has 100 rounds, with the difficulty increasing sharply at the later rounds. Looking at history, there were very few Imperial Court winners who were able to cross through every round. We should not be optimistic in being able to overcome the final round. As long as we can put all our efforts in passing the earlier rounds, our tribe's strength will rise greatly. The elders were filled with joy, but this was bad news to He Lulan. There were only two ways for him to obtain a strength path immortal Gu from 88 Truyang Building. First was to get a high-grade evaluation and enter the treasure room, then use his bloodline identity to exchange for the immortal Gu inside. Second was to pass the final round of every floor, which could give him the chance to obtain an immortal Gu. To He Lulan, the first method required him to bring out an equivalently valuable treasure to exchange, and thus was not practical. The only probability of success was in the second method. Passing through the last few rounds would be extremely difficult. The rounds were reset now. They would have to overcome these rounds again, which no doubt would waste his precious time. Time waits for no man. Once their time was up, they would be sent out of Imperial Court blessed land. If he could not get a strength path immortal Gu before this happens, He Lulan would not only be unable to take revenge, but would also have to welcome his death. For this reason, He Lulan stubbornly maintained his stance in spite of others' wishes and started recruiting other tribes' Gu masters, completely opening up 88 Truyang Building. Everyone could casually enter or exit 88 Truyang Building free of charge. Other than He tribe elders, everyone in the sacred palace was celebrating in joy. He Lulan has a grand demeanor, doing something that no other lords of Imperial Court have done before. I, Yi Lui Sang, am in deep admiration. Yi Lui Sang was the first to enter 88 Truyang Building, his face covered in a joyful glow. He was the current tribe leader of Yi Lui tribe and had been a popular candidate to win the prior imperial court contest. The tribe's Gu immortals supported him greatly, not even stinting on lending a fire path immortal Gu to him. But he lost in the end, and to preserve the fire path immortal Gu, he had no choice but to side with He Lulan. They finally won and succeeded in entering imperial court blessed land, but as one of the super forces, he felt that it was a disgrace to be a subordinate of He tribe. He was sure to be treated coldly, abandoned and even punished when he returned to the tribe. If I can have good gains in 88 True Yang building, then I can make up for the earlier mistakes and return grandly to the tribe. Yi Lui Sang's emotions surged. Chang Shan, don't be proud of yourself. As long as you don't become an immortal, I will have a chance. 88 True Yang building is my cornerstone to rise up. Chang Biao had a cold look in his eyes. He was also among the first batch of experts to enter the tower. He was not moving alone and had a companion beside him. It was Soul Blade General Pan Ping. Previously at Xingqiu Mountain Peak, Pan Ping's opportunity had been openly seized by Fang Yuan, which created a lot of indignance in his heart. Chang Biao learned of this situation and intentionally approached Pan Ping. The two hit it off, becoming partners. Go, become the vanguards to open my path, use your lives to broaden my way. He Lulan sneered inwardly, using his owner token while calmly looking at the grand flow of people entering the tower. After the flow of people had gradually become sparse, Tai Bai Yunsheng with his simple and aged appearance, tall and sturdy physique, clothed in a white robe, he appeared at the top floor of the sacred palace. Old Sir Tai Bai. He Lulan greeted him. Lord Tribe Leader has astonishing mettle, this old man is overwhelmed. Tai Bai Yunsheng exclaimed in admiration. He had an elegant demeanor and leisurely attitude. Since everyone could casually enter and exit now, they were not restricted by the quota. He also did not anxiously enter the tower immediately since the rounds which might give lifespan Gu as the reward would definitely be the later rounds. The two exchanged a few words before Tai Bai Yunsheng entered the tower. There is strength in numbers. He Lulan was feeling overwhelmed in his mind. From the information sent by the owner token, in just a short period of time, because of the enormous quantity of Gu masters, they had successively gotten through the first 30 rounds. However, at the 40th round and above, just numbers would not work, they required specific Gu master experts to cross those rounds. Pan Ping, Chang Biao, Yi Lui Sang and Tai Bai Yunsheng made their moves one after another, and were able to push to the 53rd round. But here, their momentum came to a stop, they encountered a problem, they needed an enslavement path master to pass this round. Looks like we must have Wolf King to pass this round. Tai Bai Yunsheng muttered while stroking his snow-white beard. In this imperial court contest, Fang Yuan's performance left behind an extremely deep impression on everyone. The glorious title of the #1 enslavement path Gu master of this generation in Northern Plains was already given to him. Thus, as they encountered this problem, everyone's first thought was Fang Yuan. Strange, why don't I see Chang Shan? Yi Lui Sang looked around him, but could not find Chang Shan. Wolf King has been taking his wolves out for hunting these few days. Soon, someone replied. Chang Shan is indeed an extraordinary person, we can casually enter and exit 88 True Yang building, but his heart is actually not moved. Sighs and admiration could be heard among the group. Pan Ping snorted, speaking in a gloomy tone, everyone, please don't forget that our Lord Wolf King has already entered the tower before. According to a reliable source, he passed with high-grade evaluation. After he exited the tower, he immediately went to closed-door cultivation and even refused many invitations from tribe leader He Lulan. The crowd here knew of the conflict between him and Fang Yuan, and as no one wished to offend this uprising Soul Blade General, the praises and admiration towards Fang Yuan immediately stopped. Everyone sank into a momentary silence. Many Gu master experts also had a slight change in expressions as they showed a somewhat unexpected look on their face. Pan Ping had a sinister motive in mentioning Fang Yuan had obtained a huge benefit before, leaving it to everyone's ample imagination as to what reward it was, and with this, succeeded in inciting jealousy in their hearts. If it was before when these people did not have any experience of the enormous benefits provided by 88 Truyang building, it would have been slightly better. But now that they had experienced it as they passed the rounds, the fire of envy was lit up in the depths of their hearts. At this moment, a young Gu master's voice broke the silence. Since 88 Truyang building is open for everyone can obtain benefits. Lord Father being able to obtain the benefits was due to his own ability. The crowd's gazes quickly moved towards the source and discovered it was none other than Chang Shan Yin's own son, Chang Jiyu. Immediately, Pan Ping's expression turned sharp as he viciously gazed at Chang Jiyu. Although Chang Jiyu was somewhat weaker than Pan Ping, his heart was filled with reverence towards his father, so he did not back down and instead returned Pan Ping's gaze with his own furious gaze. Killing intent surged in Pan Ping's mind, but he did not dare to make a move. He was unexpected put on the spot by Chang Jiyu, a junior. The person with the most complicated feelings right now was Chang Biao. He was Chang Jiyu's own blood father, but right now, he had to look on at his own son defending his greatest enemy. Grievance and hatred were surging up non-stop in his heart. Cough cough. Tai Bai Yunsheng stood up to alleviate the tension. Everyone, let's concentrate on this round. At this point, we can only request Lord Wolf King's assistance. Among us, old Sir Tai Bai has the highest reputation. As long as you personally send a letter, Wolf King will definitely accept the request. The Gu masters spoke one after another, but Chang Biao and Pan Ping glanced at each other, their hearts filled with worry. If Wolf King comes, he was sure to pass this round. But with this, not speaking of the rewards he would get from passing the round, his prestige would increase even more. This was a situation these two were not willing to see. Pan Ping wanted to speak up but hesitated. He had the mind to prevent this, but it was not easy getting a chance to interrupt Tai Bai Yunsheng and make him back down. If Chang Jiyu again interrupted here, his face might be lost completely. Chang Biao was secretly observing Pan Ping's expression and saw Pan Ping opening his mouth several times but did not manage to speak in the end. He inwardly cursed Pan Ping for being a coward, then looked around and signaled a planted agent among the crowd. This planted agent immediately comprehended the signal and shouted out, "In my opinion, Lord Wolf King is occupied with important matters, it probably won't be easy to invite him. Why don't we request Lord Tang Miaoming instead? Her enslavement path attainment is already very close to Master Realm." Tai Bai Yunsheng's thoughts could not help being shaken. He did not have much interaction with Fang Yuan, but he knew deeply of the latter's arrogance. Instead of taking the risk of facing embarrassment from being refused, it might truly be better to let Tang Miaoming try first. Flap flap flap. Groups after groups of blissful snow bats flew from all around like rivers converging into the sea, as they flew towards Di Chiu Cave. The peculiar fragrance had spread for 100 li. It was this rich fragrance that had attracted the blissful snow bat groups. At this stage, the Gu refinement was already approaching the end. This is using the lives of beasts as sacrifices. It is a wonderful method that is similar to the workings of 88 Truyang building. It is just that in case of 88 Truyang building, the small towers sacrificed the wild Gu to combine their strength. As he personally put it into practice, Fang Yuan gained an even more profound understanding of this Gu refinement. The peculiar fragrance gradually dissipated, and without its temptation, the small number of remaining blissful snow bats flew away in disorder. It is about to finish. Fang Yuan's breathing turned rough and his gaze staring at the cave fixatedly, unable to conceal his excited expression. Chapter 566, Water Pavilion, Resolving the Mystery. By this point, Fang Yuan was overwhelmed with awe. This mysterious Gu immortal who created Di Qiu inheritance was definitely a grandmaster in terms of refinement attainment. The entire process was using 88 True Yang Building's heavenly power. It was innovative and daring. Although Fang Yuan was the executor, his role was really that of an assistant. Refining Gu was hard, refining an immortal Gu was even harder. It was harder than ascending to heaven. For a comparable example, a rock has been pushed onto the peak of a cliff by a mysterious Gu immortal. Fang Yuan is only giving it a final push, easily sending this rock flying towards the ground and crashing. That would be success. Swish swish swish. The cave had already formed into a black water spiral. The spiral continued to spin, letting out a weird noise. Soon after, the tower's tip appeared, followed by its body and base. From within the spiral, a brand new small tower appeared with seemingly countless Gu worms inside. Incredible! With the appearance of this tower, the final loophole is gone. Even if someone comes here due to the commotion, they would not find anything. Fang Yuan praised as he sighed. But although the tower was formed, why has the immortal Gu not appeared yet? Fang Yuan's gaze focused. He found that in the small tower, there was a strong light that flickered. There was a weak feeling of connection with it in his heart. He instantly understood that this was the early stage of the immortal Gu. He was about to use this connection to lure the immortal Gu out. When suddenly, this strong light escaped like an intangible shadow, towards the southeast direction. What happened? Fang Yuan was shocked in his heart. By now, the 4 steps of light in the soil, shine up to 100,000 feet high, swimming in the sky for 100 li, praising plum-fragrant snow, had been completed. Fang Yuan did not know what was going on with this sudden change. He Lulan opened up the 88 True Yang building after it formed once more. It was truly a huge move. According to logic, I should be heading to the building to challenge it. That is what a normal person would do. The early stage immortal Gu had flown to a faraway place, as Fang Yuan looked at the sacred palace hesitantly. Although he was outside, he had already made preparations. Be it Chang tribe or Gu tribe, they were sending him real-time information. The longer Fang Yuan was away from the sacred palace, the more suspicion he would attract. If they were stuck at a stage and needed the Wolf King's power, some people might come to find him and it took time for information to be transmitted. Fang Yuan had no idea that his enemy Chang Biao helped him indirectly. At this moment, Tang Miaoming took great risks and was able to successfully pass the round, causing a huge wave of cheering inside the building. The immortal Gu was still the most important matter. Fang Yuan only hesitated for a moment before making up his mind, spreading his wings and chasing after the strong light. This strong light was like a cocoon. It traveled along the ground at an absurd speed. Because of the trees and bushes shielding it from sight, no one took notice of it. Fang Yuan chased it in the air, trying to hide his traces as he abandoned the wolves behind, traveling stealthily. As time passed, this strong light became dimmer, but its speed rose. Although he was rank 5 peak stage, his speed was not at the peak of the mortal realm. It was very tough chasing the Gu, but he did not lose sight of it. In the end, it was because this early stage immortal Gu was not created solely by Fang Yuan. Different from when he refined divine travel Gu, Fang Yuan was only an assistant this time. It was all due to the backflow of 88 True Yang Building's heavenly power. He was immortal. It was already a huge achievement from much effort to be able to gain a connection to the immortal Gu. The strong light entered a valley and flew into a waterfall, vanishing. But using the connection, Fang Yuan could sense that the early stage immortal Gu was still. Fang Yuan penetrated the waterfall but collided on the smooth and wet mountain rock. At once, rocks crumbled as water splashed all over the place. Weird. Fang Yuan was confused. The connection in his heart told him that the strong light was inside this water, but he diverted the water flow and even destroyed this waterfall. and yet he could not find a trace of this immortal Gu. Was my effort in vain? No, there is a huge trick here. He flew up and observed the terrain. This small waterfall had already become a pool. It was extremely ordinary. The valley was nameless, it was not a unique location. Fang Yuan placed his sights on this pool. The connection in his heart told him that the early stage immortal Gu was inside, but even if he went through the waterfall, or controlled the water flow, he could not find it. At this time, the Gu Master's investigative Gu worms would be tested. Fang Yuan was obviously unresigned. He tried many investigative methods. Although he did not excel in investigation, he controlled Hu immortal blessed land and had access to treasure yellow heaven. He did not lack rank 5 mortal Gu. Only when he tried the 57th method, after a considerable expense in immortal essence stones, did he have a discovery. Only to see that in the pool, there was the silhouette of a pavilion. It looked like the reflection of the moon in the water. He entered the water, but did not enter the pavilion. After trying for several times without success, Fang Yuan gasped. He finally recognized this pavilion after a flash of inspiration struck him. Is this the long-lost immortal Gu house, water pavilion? Immortal Gu were unique, so were immortal Gu houses. This water pavilion was inferior to 88 True Yang building. It was only rank 7. But it had a great reputation. It was the signature method of the Gu immortal Shui Ni. Shui Ni was a rank 8 Gu immortal, the legend that created the water path. She was also the creator of one of the top 10 sects in Central Continent, Spirit Affinity House. In contrast to the grandness of 88 True Yang building, Water Pavilion could hide itself in the water, becoming like an illusion. It was very mystical. It could move with currents or hide inside mist and fog, flying in the sky. It could even hide in a corner of an iceberg, becoming undetectable. Without the token to enter the pavilion, Water Pavilion could even repel rank 8 Gu immortals. But right now, this pavilion was ownerless, its doors were open. Fang Yuan was kept in the dark earlier, but now that he found out the truth, he had the method to enter. To enter Water Pavilion, I have to become water. There is a killer move called Water Spirit Transformation. Together with a few Gu, I can turn into a water spirit. My battle strength would surge and I would have terrain advantage. Fang Yuan searched through his memories and found a method. But in the end, Hu Immortal Land Spirit bought a rank 5 current charge Gu for him in Treasure Yellow Heaven. This Gu could allow a Gu Master to turn into a water current temporarily and charge for a distance. But it was already outdated in the Gu world. That was because when the Gu Master transforms into a current, he might suffer heavy injuries or even die when hit by a fire path Gu worm. But Fang Yuan was not using this Gu to battle, it was to enter Water Pavilion. It was more convenient than using the killer move to transform into a water spirit. With a swoosh, Fang Yuan turned into a current and rushed towards Water Pavilion. The pavilion was neither big nor small, it had 3 layers. It had a rustic flair to it, as the materials used were very ancient, having furniture and drawings. Once Fang Yuan entered, he kept the current charge Gu and went to the 3rd floor, pushing open a door to find the early stage immortal Gu. Only to see that this early stage immortal Gu was like a thumb-sized cocoon. It was inside a large red bowl at the moment. This bowl was larger than a water tank, the edges were uneven, looking like a shark's teeth. Inside, there was some blue liquid that was oozing with coldness. So that's it. Fang Yuan realized at once. Although the 4 steps allowed the refinement of the early stage of the immortal Gu, the Gu was still not complete. It needed to further nurture and grow. The mysterious Gu immortal placed the water pavilion here in order to give the early stage immortal Gu a good place to nurture itself. There were some words on the large red bowl. Fang Yuan looked at them and even with his knowledge, he could only decipher a portion of them. These are Inkman characters. Legend says that the splashes of literature water on Book Mountain in Qianquan Crystal Wall created the first written characters in this world. These characters had been lost long ago. Even Inkmen barely knew them after being chased out of Book Mountain. The Gu immortals in Treasure Yellow Heaven must have some research materials regarding the Inkman language. After all, many Gu immortals are interested in Book Mountain. They have been searching for the gray-white stone slab in order to recreate Qianquan Crystal Wall. Fong Yuan had a thought and immediately contacted Little Hu Immortal. The value of Hu Immortal Blessed Land was displayed again. It allowed a mortal like Fong Yuan to use the precious resource of mobilizing Gu immortals. The price was hefty, but after exchanging for some information regarding Inkman language, Fong Yuan deciphered the words on this bowl on the spot. The result made Fong Yuan become shocked and excited, so this inheritance was created by Mo Yao. This Mo Yao was a brilliant person, the 36th generation fairy of Spirit Affinity House. She had a special identity, she was an Inkman. But eventually, she broke the limits of her race, and became a rank 7 Gu immortal. She made tremendous contributions to the righteous path, and used her love to reform a huge demonic character 10,000 years ago, Sword Demon Bo Qing. Bo Qing was a lone cultivator. He had a lowly start but his talent was superb. He created Sword Path Gu worms single-handedly, and roamed the 5 regions without any obstruction or anyone that could match him. He was among the most brilliant rank 8 peak stage experts in history. He had great battle strength that shook the heavens. His Sword Path Gu worms were innovative and special, they had great strength. He was known as the pseudo-immortal venerable who split the 5 regions with his sword. It was fortunate for the people in the world that love changed him. It meant that, this person had great battle strength, only inferior to the immortal and demon venerables of each era. Thankfully, because of love, he changed from demonic to righteous. It was truly a fortunate thing for all life in this world. Back then, Bo Qing was even a hot favorite for the person to advance to rank 9. But eventually, he failed when trying to get to rank 9 and turned into ashes. As his wife, Mo Yao resisted with her life, and eventually died with him. In history, Mo Yao was a true refinement grandmaster. No wonder, back then when Giant Sun Immortal Venerable recruited concubines, the 10 Central Continent sects provided beautiful female Gu masters. Among them, Spirit Affinity House sent numerous female Gu immortals into the palaces, as an offering to the Immortal Venerable. Between the concubines that gained Giant Sun Immortal Venerable's favor, a few were from Spirit Affinity House. As an insider, it was no wonder that her understanding of the Sacred Palace and 88 True Yang building greatly surpassed ordinary people. Mo Yao was the 36th generation fairy of Spirit Affinity House. She was naturally nurtured fully by Spirit Affinity House. It was easy for her to investigate the hidden secrets about 88 True Yang building. The origin of the water pavilion here could be explained as such. In the Inkman words, this immortal Gu's information was written. Calamity Beckoning Gu. Chapter 567, The Comprehension of Life Since Long Ago. The corners of Fong Yuan's lips curled up into a smile as he read the ink text on the sides of the bowl. This Calamity Beckoning Gu was a rank 7 immortal Gu, a rank higher than Fong Yuan's Spring-Autumn Cicada. Its ability was extremely strange, actually involving the matter of earthly calamities and heavenly tribulations. The middle section of the ink text explained its ability in detail. When a Gu immortal goes through calamity and invokes disaster, Calamity Beckoning Gu could detach the earthly calamity and heavenly tribulation from the original target and draw them to oneself. Fong Yuan's expression could not help but become strange. Such an immortal Gu, who would dare to use it? What terrifying and destructive strength did earthly calamities and heavenly tribulations have? How terrifying was its heavenly power? Instead of spending one's days to their heart's content, using Calamity Beckoning Gu to attract these earthly calamities and heavenly tribulations, wasn't this seeking one's own doom? Gu Immortal Mo Yao was the 36th generation fairy of the Grand Spirit Affinity House, why would she refine an immortal Gu like this? The last section of the ink text provided the reason. It turned out she was really courting death. Back then when she and Bo Qing were deeply in love, they were a famous couple of the righteous path, and a romantic tale of their story spread throughout the 5 regions. Sword Immortal Bo Qing had outstanding talent with no opponents that matched him in the whole world. He was well known as the pseudo-immortal venerable who split the 5 regions with his sword. It was fortunate for the people in the world that love changed him. Even in the whole wide world, looking at his entire life, the only thing in front of him was the one supreme goal of breaking through to rank 9. However, challenging the rank 9 barrier was extremely dangerous. Even the Grand Sword Immortal had a feeling that he was walking on thin ice and only had a 15% chance of success at most. Bo Qing's ambition was lofty, vowing to reach the apex that was rank 9. Mo Yao persuaded him in vain, and as such, she could only tearfully make preparations to assist him. Bo Qing set up his inheritances and arranged for future events. His first attempt of breaking through failed. He was left in a state of heavy injuries for 70 years, bedridden the whole time without being able to even budge. His everyday life was all taken care of by Mo Yao. After his injuries got better, Bo Qing once again desired to break through to rank 9. Mo Yao knew the difficulty level of this, especially during the final trial of breaking through to rank 9 when limitless earthly calamities and heavenly tribulations would descend. Bo Qing might have terrifying battle strength, but he lacked the sustainability to endure through the trial. To help her husband, she secretly betrayed her sect and started to make plans towards 88 True Yang Building. 88 True Yang Building was the famous setup created by an immortal venerable and the skillful long-hair ancestor, the #1 immortal Gu house in the world. Mo Yao had already started her research on it a long time ago and had gained much insight from it, which helped her to deepen her Grandmaster refinement path attainment. She might be a variant human and did not have Giant Sun's bloodline, but Spirit Affinity House had provided many outstanding girls to Giant Sun to become his concubines during his time. Among them, several female Gu immortals had gained Giant Sun Immortal Venerable's favor. Thus, Spirit Affinity House was able to obtain many secrets of Giant Sun Immortal Venerable, which included detailed information on 88 True Yang Building. Mo Yao was able to learn of 88 True Yang Building's secret from these resources. Imperial Court Blessed Land was situated at the exact center of Northern Plains. The space inside was as vast as a world and the time was separated into day and night as well. The good fortune in 88 True Yang Building was extremely deep. Thus, at every set interval of time, it would attract extremely powerful earthly calamities and heavenly tribulations. Giant Sun Immortal Venerable considered this point and placed a divert disaster Gu when setting up 88 True Yang Building, which was an important cornerstone of 88 True Yang Building. This Gu was a rank 7 immortal Gu and was one of the essence of Giant Sun Immortal Venerable's luck path. It could divert the earthly calamities and heavenly tribulations in Imperial Court Blessed Land to the outside world. Because of this, the earthly calamities and heavenly tribulations formed into the 10-year blizzard disaster that spread over the entire northern plains. Conversely, Giant Sun Immortal Venerable used this 10-year blizzard disaster to set up a rule which formed into the tradition of the Imperial Court contest. Mo Yao discovered a loophole that was not strictly a loophole in this point. Originally, Imperial Court Blessed Land coexisted with 88 True Yang Building in symbiosis, and as such, every 10 years, there would be vast and powerful earthly calamities and heavenly tribulations. At this time, Imperial Court Blessed Land would open up a small crack in accordance to divert disaster Gu, to send out the earthly calamities and heavenly tribulations. Imperial Court Blessed Land was set by Giant Sun Immortal Venerable to only allow mortals to enter or exit and did not allow the entry of Gu immortals. But at the time when it had to divert disaster, there would be a hidden crack in Imperial Court Blessed Land from which the calamities and tribulations would rush out like a flood, and at this time the setup that prevents Gu immortals from entering would be ineffective. Mo Yao used this small crack and risked her very life in going against the calamities and tribulations to enter Imperial Court Blessed Land. She spent close to 10 years investigating inside the blessed land, and after suffering countless hardships, she was able to find the crucial node through her Grandmaster Refinement Path attainment. It was the small tower at Di Chio area. Next, she risked the danger of awakening giant sun's will and destroyed this small tower, using the backward flow of the heavenly power to sense divert disaster Gu and create a cave that would foster calamity beckoning Gu. After she succeeded in refining the early stage of the immortal Gu, she set up the immortal Gu House Water Pavilion in this nameless valley. Inside the pavilion, Mo Yao completely nurtured the early stage immortal Gu to its completed form and brought the calamity beckoning Gu outside secretly using the chance when the blessed land was diverting disaster. She did not destroy all these arrangements just in case of any accidents. If Bo Qing failed in his breakthrough again and calamity beckoning Gu was also destroyed in earthly calamities and heavenly tribulations, then she would have to enter the blessed land again to refine calamity beckoning Gu. However, she never returned after this. Sword Immortal Bo Qing's second attempt at breaking through to rank 9 failed completely and he was turned into ashes by the vast heavenly tribulations. As for Mo Yao, she perished alongside him. So it was like that. Breaking through to rank 9 involves numerous difficulties and dangers. Mo Yao set up this inheritance secretly beforehand but did not explain the true content of the inheritance. It was because this action was betraying the sect. But she still left the preceding clues for the sect in the end. In my previous life, Central Continent's Gu immortals schemed against Imperial Court Blessed Land and destroyed 88 True Yang building by using the clues she had left behind. As Fang Yuan recalled now, he immediately had a feeling of the fog dispersing in his mind and everything had gotten an explanation. There was a poem left at the ending of the ink text. The long immortal path is filled with obstacles, encounters occur at faraway places. Too long has passed, emotions and hatred have already lasted for a long time. My Lord thinks about the apex of immortality, while I think of his safety. Life and death are separated, I will support my Lord's dreams. This was clearly Mo Yao's work. The path of a Gu immortal is long and filled with difficulties, however I was fortunate enough to meet with my Lord. Unknowingly, emotions and hatred tangled, and I was unable to free myself. Lord's sight was focused on the limit of the immortal path, while my gaze was on my Lord himself. The attempt of breaking through to rank 9 was a near-death situation. I was not willing to be separated with him by life and death, so all I could do was to help my Lord realize his dream in my own way. To protect her love, to help Bo Qing walk to the peak of a Gu immortal, Mo Yao was willing to sacrifice herself, using calamity beckoning Gu to draw the earthly calamities and heavenly tribulations to herself. A strange woman. Fang Yuan sighed. Although he would absolutely not make such a sacrifice because of love, it did not hinder Fang Yuan from understanding such a person. It was to the extent where his understanding of this was deeper than others. Humans that live in this world had desires, they had their goals and meanings in life. Mo Yao's goal was her lover. Fang Yuan's goal was to chase eternal life. The different desires, different goals and different meanings forged all kinds of lives in this huge world to create heroes that had their own independent character. Fang Yuan's gaze fell towards the center of the giant vermilion bowl. The cocoon had already burst open and calamity beckoning Gu had already completely formed. Its shape was like a silkworm cocoon with a gray body and the size of a little finger. It was currently moving up and down in the water. Calamity beckoning Gu was a genuine self-sacrifice Gu and was used to abandon oneself for others. This Gu seemed to have no use to Fang Yuan, but in fact still had an enormous value. First of all, it was an immortal Gu. Even if he did not use it, he could exchange it for an enormous amount of immortal essence stones in treasure yellow heaven. Secondly, it was a luck path Gu that was able to attract earthly calamities and heavenly tribulations. Calamities and tribulations were powerful, but as long as one was strong and tough enough, then they could use it in a unique way to harm others. Finally, it was formed by borrowing the strength of one of the cornerstones of 88 True Yang building, Divert Disaster Gu. It and Divert Disaster Gu could be said to be two sides of the same coin, one attracted calamities while the other diverted disaster. This connection would provide huge assistance to Fang Yuan's plans in 88 True Yang building. However, even though there was a connection to it in his heart, there was a condition before Fang Yuan could completely subdue this Gu. Mo Yao had mentioned it in detail in the ink text on the side of the bowl. There was a necessary condition to subdue calamity beckoning Gu. It did not matter whether it was a mortal or immortal, but they had to have the heart of self-sacrifice. If they did not have the heart to sacrifice themselves and forcibly tried to subdue calamity beckoning Gu, in the best case, it would lead to a backlash from the immortal Gu, and in the most serious case, the immortal Gu would self-destruct and cause harm to the Gu master's life. N0V3LTR0VE served as the original host for this chapter's release on No V3L B1N. In the water pavilion, Fang Yuan stood in front of the giant bowl, with no expression on his face. Heart of self-sacrifice, did he have it? Cough cough cough. Tang Miaoming covered her lips with a handkerchief, her beautiful brows furrowing deeply in pain. Big sister. Tang tribe's third young master Tang Fong called out from the side with a lamenting expression. Tang Miaoming was lying back in bed, she waved her hand to indicate Tang Fong to not worry. Tang Fong heaved a deep sigh as he looked at the blood on the handkerchief. Big sister, why did you risk your life? What good is there in passing this round? Father and the others have already passed away, you are my only relative left, what would I do if anything happened to you? Tang Miaoming lightly caressed Tang Fong's hair. Third brother, you are our Tang tribe's tribe leader, you should not be lacking in ambition. Our Tang tribe had suffered heavily in this imperial court contest and was almost swallowed by other tribes. Now is a very rare opportunity, we need to use 88 True Yang building to make our tribe prosper again. Tang Fong pouted in a nonchalant manner, but big sister, you suffered heavy injuries by trying to force your way through the round, the gains do not make up for the losses. I have been very distressed because of this and had no mood to manage the tribe's affairs these days. What? Tang Miaoming's expression turned solemn and she stared at Tang Fong sharply. Without any hesitation, she reprimanded him, tribe leader Tang Fong, you have a heavy responsibility upon you, how could you still have the sentiments of a child? Reviving the tribe is your duty, it is the meaning of being the leader of a tribe. From now on, I do not want to hear you complain like this ever again, do you understand? Big sister, I was wrong. Tang Fong immediately stood up from the edge of the bed and lowered his head to admit his mistake with an ashamed expression. His big sister was the one who loved him the most since young. Tang Miaoming's gaze gradually softened, sighing faintly, third brother, I know your nature, you like traveling and want to be free from this duty, to live a life without any restraints. But you are the last man in our family, you should be brave enough to assume this responsibility. From now on, the meaning of your life will be to revitalize the tribe, do you understand? Big sister is right, I understand. Don't get angry big sister, you are still injured. Tang Miaoming said in a solemn tone, after returning, copy the first section of chapter 3 of 10 times. Tang Fong's heart was immediately filled with warmth. Since young, his big sister's punishment to him was to make him copy books. Big sister, take a good rest, I will go copy it now. Chapter 3, First Section. Ren Zhu's second daughter Desolate Ancient Moon climbed Shengbai Mountain and searched for Success Gu to rescue her father from the door of life and death. But at the final juncture, she failed and lost her sense of self, becoming an ugly and powerful monster. Without his daughter to rescue him, and his eldest son Verdant Great Son still addicted and dejected, Ren Zhu was trapped in Luopa Valley, unable to return to life. Luopa Valley was like a giant maze, its paths twisted and turned. Occasionally, boundless bewilderment fog would spread and cause the soul to slacken, and occasionally, Luo Po wind that was as sharp as a knife would blow and cut down souls. Renzu had a spiritual body now and was unable to find the way out of the bewilderment fog. His soul was cut down by Luo Po wind, becoming weaker and weaker, and the situation turned even more dangerous. The soul fragments cut down by Luo Po wind started to converge gradually and turned into a youth. Like this, Renzu's third son was born. He was Northern Dark Ice Soul. My son, thank you for your company. I do not have much time left, having you to accompany me in my final days. Father did not have to feel lonely. Renzu sighed with deep emotions. Northern Dark Ice Soul had a cold appearance but was warm-hearted, and although he did not speak much, he was very filial to Renzu. And as he looked at Renzu growing weaker and weaker every day, his mood also became heavier. He decided to rescue Renzu. Renzu sensed his determination, and felt both happiness and heartache. Don't be worried, my son, I know of your filial heart, I now understand that life and death cannot be forced. Humans will die in the end, this is our fate. Northern Dark Ice Soul said in a sobbing tone, Father, I know your words are right. I also know my efforts might be in vain. But looking at you growing weaker like this, if I do not make an effort, my heart will feel even more pain. Let me do something for you. Renzu sighed and could only let him go. Northern Dark Ice Soul wandered in the vast Luo Po Valley. He was born here, as such, Luo Po wind could not cut down his soul and the bewilderment fog could not obstruct his vision. He searched bitterly but could not find the exit. Right as he was becoming more desperate, he came across a Gu worm. Well, to think I would be discovered by you. This Gu was like a ladybug with a chubby spherical body, but it was extremely agile and was flashing around Northern Dark Ice Soul's body. Northern Dark Ice Soul's eyes brightened as he asked in curiosity, What Gu are you? I am known as Unexpected. This Gu worm replied. Northern Dark Ice Soul's gaze dimmed down, so you are Unexpected Gu, it is a pity you are not Success Gu. Unexpected Gu sneered, Young man, do not look down on me. I have a love-hate relation with Success Gu. The strength of unexpectedness is very powerful. Do you know what your encounter with me here represents? What? Unexpected Gu shook its chubby body and said proudly, What kind of place is this? This is Luo Po Valley, a death realm. You being here means you are already dead. But by encountering me, you have come across an unexpected event in death, that is, life. Grab me, I will take you out to the human world and you can be resurrected again. Really? Northern Dark Ice Soul was exulted, Can I bring my father along? Unexpected Gu shook its head, It is you who encountered me, not your father, so I can only take you. Northern Dark Ice Soul was extremely disappointed, refusing, Since I cannot take my father with me, then I will not go. I will accompany my father till his final moment. Unexpected Gu laughed loudly and spoke in a domineering tone, Unexpectedness in life is beyond your control. Young man, you must come with me. The moment it finished speaking, Unexpected Gu forcibly took Northern Dark Ice Soul and instantly left life and death door, arriving in the human world. Northern Dark Ice Soul obtained flesh body and was feeling extremely bewildered facing this vast world alone. Unexpected Gu disappeared. He suddenly remembered Renzu once saying he had an elder sister who was called Desolate Ancient Moon. At this moment, Cognition Gu took the initiative to find him. Young man, do not be suspicious, Cognition has always been the friend of humans, I am here to help you. Cognition Gu told Northern Dark Ice Soul about Chengbai Mountain and also the events detailing Desolate Ancient Moon. Northern Dark Ice Soul decided to first see his elder sister. When he saw Desolate Ancient Moon, his tears fell in sadness. Northern Dark Ice Soul tried to converse with Desolate Ancient Moon, but Desolate Ancient Moon who had turned into a monster kept on repeating questions. Where is this? Northern Dark Ice Soul thought for a while and answered, this is the human world, living beings can move about here. Above us is the heavens and below our feet is earth. Who am I? Desolate Ancient Moon asked again. You are a human, Ren Zhu's second child, your name is Desolate Ancient Moon. You are my elder sister. Northern Dark Ice Soul replied. Elder sister, wake up quickly. Our father is trapped in Luopa Valley, dying, we need to resurrect him soon. Ren Zhu. Desolate Ancient Moon. Resurrect? The monster shook its head, extremely puzzled, why should I resurrect him? Could it be that humans should not die? What disadvantage is there in death? Why do humans live? Why do I live? This time, Northern Dark Ice Soul was not able to answer. Why do people live? As Northern Dark Ice Soul pondered over this question, Bewilderment Gu quietly approached him, making him lose his sense of the surroundings. Subsequently, Love Gu and Disguise Gu also approached him. Cognition Gu felt a big headache when it saw them. These several Gu were famous for their mischief and would often move together, even Cognition Gu did not want to provoke them. Love, have you not harmed enough people? Why are you not letting them go? Cognition Gu sighed. Don't try to speak reason with me, I am completely unreasonable. Love Gu said in an unruly tone, get lost, Cognition, I do not like you. Cognition Gu could only leave helplessly. Another human came again. Ha! Love Gu was extremely happy when it saw Northern Dark Ice Soul, because it had another target to play with. It and Disguise Gu were sworn brothers, and on the spot, it used Disguise Gu's power to disguise as Cognition Gu. Young man, your elder sister has lost herself. If you want to save her, you need to find Meaning Gu. Northern Dark Ice Soul regained his senses and asked Love Gu without doubting, I have seen Unexpected Gu, please tell me where this Meaning Gu is. How should I look for it? Love Gu deceived him in a serious tone, O human, you should know, there is a meaning to why you are all living in this world. As long as you find Meaning Gu, your elder sister can awaken. Follow the direction I point towards and keep moving forward, you will eventually find Meaning Gu. Northern Dark Ice Soul expressed his gratitude before immediately setting off. Love, Bewilderment and Disguise Gu guffawed as they looked at his receding figure. In this world, how could there be a Meaning Gu? There was simply no such Gu, Northern Dark Ice Soul would, as such, not find it no matter how much he searched for it. Fool, who told you all to anger me? I will let you guys know how terrifying the punishment of love can be. From now on, let's follow him and toy with him in turns. Love Gu's proposal was approved by the other two Gu. Thereupon, the three Gu played tricks on Northern Dark Ice Soul in turns, he suffered so much that words could not describe it. But to find this non-existent Meaning Gu, he kept on persevering. Such spirit moved Cognition Gu. And when Love Gu was not present, Cognition Gu approached Northern Dark Ice Soul to help him. Cognition, what are you doing? We are having a great time. Bewilderment Gu and Disguise Gu were extremely displeased with Cognition. Cognition Gu laughed, I am afraid of love, but I am not afraid of you too. Young man, use my strength to come to your senses. Northern Dark Ice Soul used Cognition Gu's power to realize the truth, he was no longer bewildered and he had seen through the disguise. Bewilderment Gu and Disguise Gu could only leave in defeat. Northern Dark Ice Soul expressed gratitude to Cognition Gu, thank you Cognition Gu. Because of you, I have thought of a way to save elder sister. What way is that? In this world, there is indeed no Meaning Gu. But why can't I create a Meaning Gu? Northern Dark Ice Soul replied confidently. Human life might have no meaning, but they could give a meaning to it. Northern Dark Ice Soul came back to Desolate Ancient Moon's side and personally created a Meaning Gu and pressed it into Desolate Ancient Moon's head. The meaning in my life is to search for success Gu and resurrect Father. I understand now, I get it. Desolate Ancient Moon's eyes brightened. Meaning in life, huh? Tang Fong put down his brush. It was late at night, warm silver light covered the land in Imperial Court blessed land. He was deeply moved after repeatedly copying the book. People will feel bewildered as they live in this world. But as long as they can find their meaning in life, they will find their direction and be able to move forward bravely. At the same time, they will also understand what they want to do and what they do not want to do, and they will not be afraid of sacrifice. Big Sister's intent in making me copy the book should be this. He lightly pushed open the window and looked at the beautiful and dazzling sacred palace, thinking of the variety of people in it. Some were strong, some were weak. His mood gradually uplifted. Every person's life has all sort of meaning. And the meaning of my life is to lead the tribe towards prosperity. At the same time, in Water Pavilion. A heart of self-sacrifice. The corners of Fong Yuan's lips curled up into a lofty smile. Without any hesitation, he moved his hand towards the giant bowl and directly picked up the Calamity Beckoning Gu. As it absorbed his aura, Calamity Beckoning Gu's body flashed with radiance and soon became Fong Yuan's possession. The whole process was extremely smooth with not the least bit of tremor and backlash. With the identity of a transmigrator and the experience gained in the 500 years in his past life, Fong Yuan had already seen through life and death. Familial feelings, friendship and love were not any his interests. Only eternal life, this majestic and unattainable target, could make the journey of his life become more interesting. This was the meaning he gave to this life. Pursuing eternal life did not mean he was afraid of death or afraid of failure. He calmly accepted death and failure. Whether eternal life existed or not, there was no evidence to prove it. But even if it did not exist, so what? Fong Yuan enjoyed the process. In the process of pursuing eternal life, he found his meaning and felt that this life was quite interesting. The lowly lust and desires of his body, satisfaction of love and hatred, he was already tired of them. Only eternal life was worthy of being his target to pursue. As a result, the necessary resolve to sacrifice, I already have it. Fong Yuan's gaze shone eerily as he played around with the rank 7 immortal Gu in his hand. Chapter 568, Mo Yao's Will. Fong Yuan carefully observed Calamity Beckoning Gu. This Gu was a rank 7 immortal Gu, and after going through the nurturing process in the giant vermilion bowl, it had already completely formed. It was the size of a little finger, was completely gray and looked very delicate like a silkworm cocoon. As Fong Yuan played with it and Calamity Beckoning Gu continued to absorb his aura, he could sense that the connection in the depths of his mind with Calamity Beckoning Gu was deepening further. Ripples appeared in Fong Yuan's heart. It would be a lie to say that he was not moved. In his previous life, he had suffered untold difficulties and slaughtered many lives to refine a rank 6 spring-autumn cicada. And now with the advantage of his rebirth, he had yet to become 100 years old but had already obtained Calamity Beckoning Gu, which was a rank higher than spring-autumn cicada. Although the use of Calamity Beckoning Gu was extremely peculiar, offering oneself as a sacrifice by attracting earthly calamities and heavenly tribulations, Fong Yuan believed firmly that the use of a Gu depended on the wits of the Gu master. Like Chainsaw Golden Centipede, which would be used in a different manner in the future by a rank 4 mortal Gu master, Chainsaw Mad Demon. So, why would Fong Yuan not be able to create new uses for Calamity Beckoning Gu? Not speaking of other things, just the existence of Calamity Beckoning Gu proves that the legendary luck path truly exists. Giant Sun Immortal Venerable was extremely lucky his whole life, and it was rumored that this was because he had created unique luck path Gu worms. However, there had never been conclusive evidence regarding this rumor. Now, Fong Yuan was holding Calamity Beckoning Gu, a luck path Gu, an immortal Gu refined by refinement path Grandmaster Mo Yao by interaction with the divert disaster Gu of 88 True Yang building. Divert Disaster Gu and Calamity Beckoning Gu were Luck Path Gu worms. The ink text in the bowl was a very strong piece of evidence. Mo Yao even directly wrote in the ink text that Giant Sun Immortal Venerable's Luck Path Gu worms could steal other people's good luck and transfer it to himself, and could also transfer his bad luck over, bringing trouble to others. As a complete path, Luck Path also had a methodical structure, including aspects of offense, defense, movement, healing and others. It was only that what it targeted was the incorporeal and formless luck which everyone possessed. After Giant Sun Immortal Venerable innovated the Luck Path, he kept it hidden and made great profits without making any commotion. Giant Sun Immortal Venerable stole luck wantonly, and with his death, the luck thief had finally perished. Mo Yao poured her feelings in the text. This strange woman had quite a temperament, daring to criticize an immortal venerable like this. She even speculated Giant Sun Immortal Venerable's Luck Path inheritance was very likely to be in the treasure room of 88 True Yang building. If I can obtain this inheritance, could I duplicate Giant Sun Immortal Venerable's success? Fang Yuan's heart thumped in excitement. He pondered for a while before placing Calamity Beckoning Gu in the giant vermilion bowl again. Although Calamity Beckoning Gu had completely taken form, Fang Yuan could not refine it. The connection between them had thickened to the extreme, but there was still a gap before he could truly become the master of Calamity Beckoning Gu. Fang Yuan was still a mortal currently and did not have immortal essence to refine it. This situation was different from when he refined Fixed Immortal Travel Gu. At Three Kings Blessed Land, he was able to refine Fixed Immortal Travel Gu with the assistance of the land spirit. He was the leading refiner. Thus when Fixed Immortal Travel Gu was born, it became his Gu. But he could not use it, and if not for the land spirit's help, Fang Yuan would not have been able to travel to Hu Immortal Blessed Land. The whole process of refining Calamity Beckoning Gu, however, was done through the backflow of the heavenly power of 88 True Yang building. Fang Yuan was an assistant at best. This was already extremely great considering he did not have the help of a land spirit. I can only truly refine it when I become a Gu Immortal. Before that, I can only leave it here. Without advancing to Gu Immortal, there would be no immortal aperture to store Calamity Beckoning Gu. If it was brought out openly, the immortal Gu aura would spread, which was sure to attract countless coveting people. Fang Yuan was not worried about He Lulan, Tai Bai Yun Sheng and the others. He had many wolf groups now and his strength path cultivation was also sufficient. What he was worried about was Giant Sun Immortal Venerables will in 88 True Yang building. Previously, the immortal Gu was in its early form and had a weak aura, but now it had already taken shape, so if it was brought out, it might stir up Giant Sun Immortal Venerable's will and awaken it. Fang Yuan was not willing to take that risk, more so when his main plan had yet to be completed. He needed to keep on hiding and waiting. Who would think that this nameless valley holds a rank 7 immortal Gu? But for now, I should first refine a part of this water pavilion before leaving. Fang Yuan pondered. Water Pavilion was a famous immortal Gu house. It looked like Fang Yuan was overestimating himself by trying to refine it as immortal, but this attempt was greatly feasible. Even the formidable 88 True Yang building had a crack, allowing Fang Yuan to study it in depth. While Water Pavilion was now a ownerless object, it could naturally be easily exploited. But to talk about this, we need to know about the inherent nature of Gu houses. What is a Gu house? Not mentioning Fang Yuan's past life, after the rebirth alone, he had encountered many Gu houses. The most common among them included the Gu house 3-star cave. It would turn into a seed when it was collected. After planting the seed, it would grow into an enormous hollow tree with 3 floors. There was Lizard House Gu with the appearance of a lizard, sporting different colors. Its eyes were windows and its mouth was the door. It could move by its own will. There was also the Mushroom Forest Gu house, which was formed by planting a large number of mushroom Gu. Many mushroom houses would form into a courtyard. These were mortal Gu, there were also immortal Gu houses like 88 True Yang Building and Water Pavilion. There were too many complicated Gu houses to talk about in their development till this day. But if one were to investigate their origin, the publicly recognized founders were the 7 Louis Gui siblings. These 7 were demonic Gu masters of the olden antiquity era. They were born as septuplets, and from birth to death, they moved together. They were experts in defense and each of them was a rank 5 peak stage Gu master. They also had a defensive killer move formed by combining their strength called Turtle House. Relying on this move, they were able to defend against 3 attacks from a Gu immortal, establishing a tale called 3 Moves Pact in history. And this Turtle House was the first Gu house in Gu master history. Thus, basically speaking, Gu houses were killer moves formed by the combination and solidification of 10 or more various kinds of Gu worms. Mushroom Forest Gu house was a model example. It was a courtyard formed by the gathering of large numbers of mushroom Gu. 88 True Yang Building was the apex of examples, possessing the ability to defend, gather, store and other effects. It was formed by countless small towers, divert disaster Gu being one of the main cornerstones. Sacrificing the gathered wild Gu, it created a power that would form the main body. There was also White Bone Chariot. Back then, proud bone demon Lord Xianxia had outstanding and shocking talent. When he became a rank 6 Gu immortal, he lacked a rank 6 Gu. So he came up with a killer move known as White Bone Chariot. The White Bone Chariot was formed from many rank 5 Gu, such as the White Bone Wheel, and had power comparable to a rank 6 Gu. This White Bone Chariot was actually a Gu house. As for 3-Star Cave, Lizard House and Large Lizard House, they were all branches developed from simplified forms of Gu houses. Normal Gu houses were formed from the combination of several Gu worms. As 3-Star Cave and the others were formed from just one Gu, thus their might was greatly reduced and became commonly used Gu houses. Water Pavilion was a rank 7 immortal Gu house. This signified there was at least one rank 7 immortal Gu among the Gu worms used to create it. With my current level, I cannot refine immortal Gu. But refining the mortal Gu is still possible. This was where Fang Yuan's confidence in refining Water Pavilion lay in. There were not many difficulties during the refining process. Water Pavilion was one of the symbols of Spirit Affinity House, wielded by Fairy Mo Yao back then. Mo Yao betrayed the sect for her love and refined Calamity Beckoning Gu, sacrificing herself. This immortal Gu house thus became ownerless. As such, to Fang Yuan, Water Pavilion was like a little beauty that had its arms wide open and he was free to play with it. Amazing, there were actually no less than 3,000 Gu worms used in the assembly of Water Pavilion. And every Gu worm was closely interrelated and had a faint resonance between them. The core was rank 7 Water Harmony Gu, which allows the Gu master to completely merge and hide in water. As long as the water was not extinguished, they won't die. Besides this, there were also 2 assisting Immortal Gu, rank 6 Movement Immortal Gu Worldly Wave Trace and Wisdom Path Immortal Gu Delight in Water and Mountain. The process of refining was in fact, the process of deepening his understanding of Water Pavilion. Refining an Immortal Gu was far beyond Fang Yuan's ability, so there was no need to attempt it in vain. What he could make a move on were the rank 1 and rank 2 Mortal Gu. Fang Yuan spent 6 hours in refinement till he was dizzy, completely refining 500 rank 1 and rank 2 Mortal Gu. I now have 10% control over Water Pavilion. Even if someone discovers it, this 10% of authority will be able to block them for a while. This time will be enough for me to be alerted and rush here in time. He refined for another 2 hours and increased his control authority to 13%. The difficulty of the refinement continued to increase at the later stages. Unfortunately, I have Spring-Autumn Cicada, which is like a ticking time bomb. I cannot use Time Path's Instant Success Gu and other Gu to help me in the refining process, otherwise my progress would not be just this. Fang Yuan felt his head spinning and knew he had already reached the limit. The primeval essence in his 2 rank 5 peak stage apertures was also almost exhausted. But just when he thought of pulling away, a figure suddenly appeared in his mind. After such a long time, I finally meet the fated one today. Following the indistinct sigh, the graceful figure of a woman with a slim body, shining dark eyes, and a veil covering her face, appeared in Fang Yuan's mind. This is Fairy Mo Yao's will. When did it enter my mind? Fang Yuan was inwardly shocked. So much time had passed, Mo Yao was not a venerable but she was still able to leave behind her will. One could tell how strong a cultivation she had back then. Fang Yuan actually already had taken precautions, but Fairy Mo Yao clearly had some special methods that allowed her will to silently enter Fang Yuan's mind. Such an ability was not trivial. Mo Yao's will had entered Fang Yuan's mind. If she wanted to unceremoniously create difficulties for him, then Fang Yuan would absolutely have to suffer the consequences. Fang Yuan was not a wisdom path expert, only wisdom path Gu masters had the power to subdue this kind of will. The most crucial thing was that when people pondered, their thoughts would first emerge. These thoughts would clash with each other in the brain and then transform, creating a new thought. This was the process of thinking. Now, Mo Yao's will had entered Fang Yuan's mind, which meant she could hear all his thoughts clearly. What would happen once Mo Yao's will learn of spring-autumn cicada? No need to be afraid, fated one, I have no intention of harming you. I only want to ask you a question. Mo Yao's will faintly asked. Fang Yuan did not even need to guess to know what she was going to ask. He told her about the fact of Bo Qing's defeat on the spot. When she heard this grievous news, Mo Yao's will shook to the point of collapsing. Fang Yuan was rejoicing covertly, but he had to be disappointed because Mo Yao's will was able to maintain her form in the end. Her dark as night eyes were filled with tears. Fairy Mo Yao's expression was extremely complex. There was sadness, but there was relief as well. Like she said in her poem, "Too long has passed, emotions and hatred have already lasted for a long time." Her love and hatred with Bo Qing was a long tale that was touching and deeply intertwined. Fated one, since you can refine Calamity Beckoning Gu and also found this place and have begun refining Water Pavilion, you should already have a general understanding. Since he is already dead, then let everything go. Sigh, maybe this is the fortune of the living. Mo Yao's will pause before continuing. I have already let down Spirit Affinity House, my only wish now is to return this Water Pavilion. As compensation, I will impart my life's refinement path attainment insights to you. Besides this, I will also tell you the secret information of 88 True Yang Building. Chapter 569, Six-Arm Heavenly Zombie King. The entire sacred palace was shrouded in an aurora. The light was dazzling and shone for the radius of 100 li. Looking at the top of the sacred palace, 2 layers of the 88 True Yang Building had already formed. Huge numbers of people were entering and exiting daily. Retracting his gaze, Fang Yuan softly closed the windows. Half a month had passed since he refined Calamity Beckoning Gu and returned from the Water Pavilion. During this period, He Lu Lan opened up 88 True Yang Building and did not charge any fees, allowing people to enter as they wished. 88 True Yang Building, Giant Sun Immortal Venerable's inheritance ground, it had incredible attraction to all Gu masters. Countless Gu masters with Giant Sun's bloodline entered like torrents of water. Even if they could not get through, they wanted to observe the glory of the event. Especially after 88 True Yang Building underwent a transformation and formed 2 layers, it triggered the people's desires to explore. As for outsiders, they could only enter using the guest token. The guest token was a one-time expenditure item, it could only be obtained on occasion when getting through a round. Until now, there had only been 7 guest tokens obtained. Each fetched an astronomical price, but it did not deter any of the expert Gu masters who did not have Giant Sun's bloodline. Fang Yuan had the Glass Owner token now, he could freely enter and exit 88 Truyang building, and even enter the treasure room. But in order to conceal himself, not long ago, he still paid a hefty price to buy a guest token. Young man, I would advise you to prepare the ink transformation killer move that I taught you. That way, once you enter the central control hall, you would have less trouble. A female voice resounded in Fang Yuan's mind. It was none other than Fairy Mo Yao's will who had stealthily sneaked in. Fang Yuan heard this and frowned. In his heart he snorted and replied, "This killer move is too outdated. Some of the goo worms have already disappeared. If I want to collect them now, it will take quite some effort. How can it be rushed?" Mo Yao's will laughed, "Young man, you are quite fortunate to have who immortal blessed land. You should make good use of treasure yellow heaven, it is not hard to purchase these goo worms." Fang Yuan frowned even more tightly. He deciphered the code and obtained Di Chio inheritance, even successfully refining calamity beckoning goo, but he also gained a huge problem known as Mo Yao's will. Mo Yao's will was now lurking inside his mind, it was a huge threat. When Fang Yuan thinks, thoughts would be generated. Mo Yao's will could read these thoughts and understand Fang Yuan's secrets. In half a month's time, she learnt about many of his secrets, including who immortal blessed land. Right now, Fang Yuan could only use space thought goo to think. Using space thought goo as the main component, and other goo worms to assist it, the thoughts formed had the power of space imbued in them. Mo Yao's will could not read them even if she caught them. But such a situation was only temporary. Will ruled above thoughts. Mo Yao's will was inside Fang Yuan's mind. After interacting with these space thoughts for a long time, she would become familiar with them, and this line of defense would not be able to stop her. Young man, you are young but you have many secrets. He, really interesting. Mo Yao's will floated in the air, moving up and down. She laughed as she covered her mouth, her eyes were watery and her posture was alluring. She was truly a past generation fairy of Spirit Affinity House. After staying with Fang Yuan for a while, she became more active, and even more curious. Her nature of wanting to probe people's secrets showed itself. Every generation of Spirit Affinity House's fairies was the cream of the crop, 1 out of 10,000, she would be talented and beautiful, pure and elegant like a sacred lotus. But Mo Yao was different, her dark pupils contained some craftiness. If she was in the demonic path, she would definitely be a demoness. She created an illusory robe, covering her body while showing the contours. She looked at the bubble-like thoughts as she grabbed one of them. Next, she exerted strength and with a pop, this thought exploded with some force. But she did not gain anything, because this thought's content was 2 words, eating dinner. She gasped lightly, her beautiful lips curving into an arousing angle, "Young man, you are not cute at all. Every time you think about something, you will make up all sorts of random thoughts to conceal the important points. Do you know that this will, in fact, make this big sister even more curious?" "Humph, with your age, you have the face to call yourself big sister." Fang Yuan snorted, threatening, "You are dead, you should rest in peace. Don't think that I cannot do anything to you now that you are in my mind. Who knows, I might make your will perish the next moment." He, so scary. Mo Yao patted her plump chest, laughing without any concern, "But during this half a month of time, you attacked me 28 times using 19 methods. Don't tell me, you are not only a strength enslavement dual cultivator, but you also cultivate in wisdom path?" Humph. Fang Yuan's heart was surging with killing intent. "Ayaya 1, young man, don't be like this." Feeling Fang Yuan's sharp killing intent, Mo Yao waved her fingers, "I am your benefactor, isn't calamity beckoning Gu your immortal Gu now? You are still immortal, it is an amazing accomplishment to have an immortal Gu. Don't worry, once you return this water pavilion to Spirit Affinity House, my wish would be fulfilled, and this would no longer have any reason to exist. Return the rank 7 immortal Gu House water pavilion." The juicy meat had already entered Fang Yuan's mouth. why would he spit it out? Fang Yuan did not want to do so, obviously, but he had no other choices. Not mentioning the piece of Mo Yao's will in his mind, there was also a portion of Mo Yao's remnant will inside the water pavilion. That meant, this Mo Yao was quite impressive. History said that she was a refinement grandmaster. But in terms of wisdom path and soul path, it seems she was even more skilled in them. Fang Yuan's multitude of mental attacks were all easily dispelled by her. Fang Yuan had a huge headache now. Even though he obtained Di Qiu inheritance, he did not earn much. He took a huge risk and made great investments to carry out Gu refinement. In the end, he obtained Calamity Beckoning Gu, but it was unusable. Mo Yao's will even entered his mind, causing him to refrain from shooting at the rat for fear of breaking the vase. This was his greatest burden at the moment. Had I known this, I would not have gone after this dog's hit Di Qiu inheritance. This thought was not concealed at all, Mo Yao easily read about it. Young man, that is not true. The refinement path killer move ink transformation that I taught you over these days is priceless. Didn't you want to make use of 88 True Yang Building's loophole? Hehe, you are so daring, almost at the same level as me. Don't worry, I will help you, as long as you return Water Pavilion to Spirit Affinity House. Mo Yao urged. Humph, Calamity Beckoning Gu is mine, but I also want Water Pavilion, even 88 True Yang Building might become my possession. You are a mere will, how can you stop me, a living person? Since they had fought for dozens of times already, Fang Yuan rejected her outright. But this time, Mo Yao did not make fun of him, her gaze shone as she recalled something. Her expression was lonely as she sighed deeply. Sigh, are all men like this? Even if they did something wrong, they would act in such a confident manner, unrelenting in their convictions being right. In this world, what counts as wrong? Who is right, who is wrong? Everyone's way of life is just different. Mo Yao's expression changed, she laughed cheekily. Young man, this is an interesting answer. But I've heard another answer, it was much more domineering than yours. He said, in this world, anything I think or do is right. Those that differ from me are wrong. He, is that domineering enough? Fang Yuan's gaze shone, Sword Immortal Bo Qing said that. Unfortunately, he did not succeed in that final step. These words made Mo Yao sink into silence, her face was full of sadness as she shut her eyes, memories were pouring in her mind as her long eyelashes were slightly trembling. The inaugural upload of this chapter took place via N0, Vel, B, J, N. She hid her figure, vanishing from Fang Yuan's mind. Damn it, she did this again. Fang Yuan gritted his teeth, every time Mo Yao's will hit herself, it would be like she did not exist, no matter how Fang Yuan tried to find her, he would not even see a trace of her. Mo Yao's attainment in soul path and wisdom path greatly exceeded Fang Yuan's. This resulted in her having free rein in his mind. But this time, he was not going to leave empty-handed. In his mind, he found one of Mo Yao's will's thoughts. The content made Fang Yuan's heart shudder. This was a killer move, named, Six-Arm Heavenly Zombie King. Fang Yuan had been trying to find a way to combine strength and enslavement paths, he thought hard and obtained an initial result, it was his strength path killer move, Four-Arm Earth King. Using this move, he went on a killing spree in the final battle of the Imperial Court contest, defeating Ma Tribe army and pushing He Lu Lan into Imperial Court blessed land. But Four-Arm Earth King was only a casually created killer move, it was full of flaws and after Fang Yuan improved on it, it became the killer move Four-Arm Wind King. After that, he found a crucial borrow strength Gu inside the treasure room of 88 True Yang Building, allowing the killer move Four-Arm Wind King to gain a huge improvement. After Mo Yao's will entered his mind, he purposely exposed a portion of his secrets, among them was this killer move, as well as his thoughts about improving this killer move. Fantastic. Fang Yuan praised. With his foundation, and Fairy Mo Yao's attainment, Six-Arm Heavenly Zombie King was a killer move nearing perfection. It used Borrow Strength Gu as the core, 6 types of Flying Zombie Gu as the supplement, and another 36 Gu worms in order to design this killer move with an amazing and specialized structure. Fang Yuan was in great awe. However, I know about the 5 great Flying Zombie Gu, but this killer move needs a 6th Flying Zombie Gu. What Gu is that? The killer move in the thought was not complete, it still lacked the final crucial step. Chapter 570, Compromise. In the dark secret room, there was a soothing sandalwood smell. Fang Yuan sat on the cushion, holding an east window Gu in his hand. This Gu was of the information path, rank 4 and shaped like a ladybug. The armor on its back was square, like window panels, specially used to store important information. This Gu was purposely bought in Treasure Yellow Heaven by Fang Yuan. The content was all about wills. Ever since Mo Yao's will had lurked in his mind, Fang Yuan had been buying and collecting information in this regard. He spent many immortal essence stones. This east window Gu was not the first. Long after, Fang Yuan slowly opened his eyes, his gaze clear as water. After reading so much precious information, he had a deeper understanding towards wills. Thought, will, emotion, the 3 were of the same branch. The former 2 belonged to the wisdom path and had much connection to many paths. Wisdom path, when first created, was a path for Gu masters that seeked wisdom solely. When people think, thoughts would appear in their mind. When these thoughts collide, fuse, or cancel each other out, new thoughts would be formed. This would be the thinking process. These thoughts were classified into different categories. They were all different and had their own specialties. Among them, the most famous one was the obsession. When a Gu immortal dies, their lingering obsession would combine with the heavenly power and form the land spirit within the blessed land. Gu masters used these thoughts to create countless related Gu worms, like Dong Fang Yu Liang Star Thought Gu, and Fang Yuan Space Thought Gu, as well as Gu immortals commonly use Divine Sense Gu. A few thoughts gather, forming will. The saying goes, will can be understood, but not described. Will cannot be expressed in words. The essence of will has surpassed the limits of written expression. Only by using one's heart, using a human spirituality, can it be felt. Initially, Wisdom Path Gu masters created Heaven's Will Gu. This Gu was used to comprehend the mechanics of the great Tao of heaven and earth, allowing one to further gain knowledge about heaven and earth, in order to improve on their own attainment. After that, as the path continued to develop, more Gu were created: Killing Intent Gu, Casual Gu, One's Wishes Gu, Proud Gu, Evil Intent Gu, Painting Idea Gu and others. Among them, the most famous one was recorded in the Legends of Renzu, the legendary Unexpected Gu. As Wisdom Path continued to develop, generations of Gu masters continued to research, and they found out that when a few wills merge together, they become emotion. Estrus Gu, Gentle Feelings Gu, and Emotion Poetry Gu were all from this path. Enchantment Path was derived from this. The most famous Gu in this path similarly came from Love Gu. Thought, will, emotion. Fang Yuan sighed. The more he learnt, the more he understood. With his current foundation in Wisdom Path, he could not get rid of Mo Yao's will. The difference between them was too great. For example, in terms of their attainment in will, Fang Yuan was like a mound, while Mo Yao's will was like a tall mountain. As for how tall this mountain was, or how grand it was, Fang Yuan could not tell, as it was shrouded in a thick layer of mist. Mo Yao's attainment had greatly exceeded Fang Yuan's understanding. During these days of interaction and probing, it left a deep impression on Fang Yuan. He felt that she was truly on another level. Her attainment was as deep as an abyss. Facing such great trouble, if he could not get rid of it, what would he do? Sitting on the cushion, after pondering for a while, Fang Yuan's gaze turned cold as he made a decision. His consciousness entered his mind, and with just a thought, Mo Yao's will felt it and her alluring figure appeared from within the pitch-black area in the mind. I accept your suggestion, I will return Water Pavilion to Spirit Affinity House. Fong Yuan transmitted his second thought. Mo Yao's eyes flashed with a peculiar light. She did not expect that Fong Yuan would compromise so quickly. According to their interaction these days, she understood clearly that Fong Yuan was that type of person with immense willpower. He was very assertive and his personality was tough and bold. Character decides one's fate. This kind of person would either become a conqueror or a hero. They were destined to be a man above man, an elite among the elite. She left behind the six-arm Heavenly Zombie King killer move, but she had some reservations and did not give him the entire thing. Instead of a bait, this was more like an indication of her attitude. She knew that with Fong Yuan's intelligence, he would understand what she was trying to say. She had estimated that Fong Yuan would choose to negotiate with her in about 7 or 8 days. But in truth, he came to look for her after a day's time. Sigh, a wise man submits to circumstances, a great man is one who is resilient. Unfortunately, most people in this world think too highly of their own abilities and refuse to lower their head due to pride. Throughout history, countless experts knew the logic of taking a step back and compromising, but it was easier said than done. When it was their turn, how many people could take that step? Mo Yao's will sighed as she said with deep emotion. Although Water Pavilion is good, it is not useful to me. You know my situation, right now because of who Immortal Blessed Land, Immortal Crane sect has declared that I am a member of their sect. Spirit Affinity House and Immortal Crane sect are both part of the top 10 sects in Central Continent. It will not be easy for me to return Water Pavilion to them. Fong Yuan said. He. Mo Yao's will chuckled, young man, I know what you mean. Don't worry, you are my inheritor, the calamity beckoning Gu is yours, I have no intention to harm you. Returning the Immortal Gu house is a huge matter, I understand the risks clearly. To accomplish this mission, you need to be a Gu immortal at least. I will do my best to help you become a Gu immortal, and I will also assist you in obtaining 88 True Yang building. As for my refinement attainment, it will depend on how much you can learn. Mo Yao said so as she waved her hand, and a thought floated in Fong Yuan's heart. The content was the final crucial part of the killer move 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King. Fong Yuan immediately asked unhappily, Earth Chief Zombie. Are you serious? This is the so-called 6th Flying Zombie Gu. Earth Chief Zombie Gu, he knew about it. This was obtained by killing an Earth Chief beast, using its skin and tendons as the materials, combined with tens of Gu worms, and using the Een soil that was 900 li deep in the ground, as well as mountain-absorbing grass that were hundreds of years old, dark tide flowers and other materials to refine. Although it was quite strong, a rank 5 Gu just like Azura Zombie, Heavenly Demon Zombie, Blood White, Nightmare Zombie and Plague Zombie, it could not fly. Without flying abilities, how could it be a flying zombie Gu? Facing Fong Yuan's suspicion, Mo Yao laughed arrogantly, ordinary Earth Chief Zombie Gu would not do. But who is this big sister? I modified the recipe long ago, and refined a new Earth Chief Zombie Gu. When a Gu master uses it and becomes an Earth Chief Zombie, even without wings, they can make use of the natural magnetic field to soar into the air, and fly as they wish. Saying so, she transmitted another thought, it was the recipe of the modified Earth Chief Zombie Gu. Fong Yuan looked at it and his eyes shone. Mo Yao had daringly added several new materials into this Gu recipe, among them was original magnetic essence as the main ingredient. That was the most important element in this modification of the Gu. Fong Yuan thought about it and with his 500 years of experience, he knew that this Gu recipe was usable, he could not help but praise in amazement. Mo Yao's will was in his mind, she laughed smugly, young man, you really know your stuff. Not bad, you have some talent in refinement. But you have to be careful, this killer move was only created based on what you provided me, I would advise you to test it out on a few people before trying it yourself. Fang Yuan nodded. The killer move 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King had great power, it was about 10 times as strong as 4-arm Earth King and 4-arm Wind King. Because it was so powerful, once it fails, the backlash would also be equally powerful. Fang Yuan could test the 4-arm Earth King himself earlier because the risks were not great, he could endure them. But this 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King was another story. The third layer has formed. In the sacred palace, cheers resounded throughout the area. The rainbow-colored aurora was still thick as ever. As time passed, 88 Truyang building was forming faster and faster, especially the newly formed third layer, it made everyone's urge to explore it go wild. 88 Truyang buildings floors each have 100 rounds, the earlier rounds were easy. But as they progressed, they got harder and the rewards were greater. Most Gu masters do not have the strength to tackle the later rounds, but the earlier rounds had rewards that they would fight for. A group of Gu masters, about a dozen, were leaving the palace in a hurry. When they were about to get past the sacred palace's eastern entrance, 88 Truyang building's third layer formed and these Gu masters stopped in their tracks. Jiang Dong looked at 88 Truyang building which was at the peak of the sacred palace, snorting and saying to Ma Hongyun who was in the group, "You Huang Jin tribe Gu masters are so lucky, any reward inside 88 Truyang building can allow you to soar to success and gain great riches." Ma Hongyun laughed sheepishly, "Leader is right, he. Sadly, my bloodline is not thick enough, I cannot enter 88 Truyang building. Otherwise, I would go in to expand my vision." Even though Huang Jin tribesmen were giant Sun Immortal Venerable's descendants, they were not guaranteed entry into 88 Truyang building. If their ancestors had diluted the bloodline too much by marrying outsiders, they would not reach the requirement and would not be able to enter. Jiang Dong heard this and the bitterness and jealousy in his heart lessened. The other Gu masters in the group also looked at Ma Hongyun more gently, someone even patted Ma Hongyun's shoulder and consoled, "You are really unlucky, but never mind, you can earn a fortune this time by coming with us to kill the Earth Chief Beast as well." Yes. Ma Hongyun nodded as he bowed, laughing apologetically. He had saved Ma Jia coincidentally. After He tribe forcefully took over Ma tribe, due to a series of events, he changed his surname and became Ma Hongyun, finally allowed to cultivate. Right now, he was a rank 1 Gu master, his aptitude was neither good nor bad. Of course he could enter 88 Truyang building, but with his strength, there was no point in that at all. During his stay in the sacred palace, he could mix around with hunting groups daily and go out to hunt, it allowed him to earn enough to cover his daily expenses and accumulate primeval stones to cultivate. As for what he told Jiang Dong, that was Zhao Lianyun's instruction before he set off.